Hey everyone, I'm Megyn Kelly. Welcome to the Megyn Kelly Show. We have alleged Jeffrey Epstein victims speaking out in D.C. this morning, along with a bipartisan group of legislators, including Ro Khanna and MTG. This comes as the House Oversight Committee releases tens of thousands of documents related to the case. But is there anything new in these documents that they received from the DOJ? Let me just start by saying this. I've got my doubts. This is the House Oversight Committee subpoenaing the DOJ, and neither of these groups has any motivation, any real interest in doing anything to upset Donald Trump, who wants this thing over. So to me, I've got to be honest, it seems like fig leaf-a-mania by everyone other than that Massey Ro Khanna effort, which is a separate thing. So you've got the House Oversight Committee subpoenaing the DOJ for all of its Epstein documents, and they do a 30,000 document dump, which so far looks like there's some stuff that may be mildly interesting, but people who know the case really well are saying this is all old, which seems like what the DOJ would do, because they're not going to give anything to House Oversight that they actually think is probative, since they've already told us that allegedly there isn't anything and they're not interested in producing anything. So let me tell you, as a lawyer involved in many litigations over the course of my professional life, it's easy to generate thousands of documents that are technically responsive to a subpoena while withholding the ones you don't want to produce, especially when it's a Republican-controlled committee. They're not actually going to go after Bondi or Team Trump for not giving the goods. So I have very low expectations on this. A couple things have come out that were like, oh, that's kind of interesting, but mild. I don't have high hopes. But then you got this separate effort by Massey, who has become a Trump antagonist, and Ro Khanna, who's a Dem, who are trying to actually get, real documents, and MTG, who she loves Trump, but she's not a sycophant. As you know, you saw her here. She'll criticize the administration, trying to actually speak with Epstein victims and what they're saying now this morning at a presser that Massey held. So that lane is kind of interesting to me, and we'll continue to watch both and bring you whatever news is coming, but just setting realistic expectations. All right, but we are going to begin today with a case from across the pond that shows just how dangerous the battle over free speech has become. And by the way, you do need to pay attention to what's happening in the UK, because it does affect Americans now, and I'll explain in a minute how. All right, over in the UK, comedy writer. I mean, this guy's like the god of comedy writers over there. He's written some of, if not their most popular comedy shows in the UK. His name is Graham Linehan, and he was arrested at Heathrow Airport, met by five armed officers. And as you may know, in the UK, most of the officers are not armed with firearms, but these guys were. Why? Because they had to take down this comedian who sent out 3 mean tweets. I am not kidding. 3 mean tweets got him arrested by 5 armed guards before he'd barely stepped onto British ground, getting off of the plane from America. I actually don't know his citizenship. I think he's a British citizen, but he was over here, and he had to go back there because he was already on trial for allegedly taking the phone of this tranny activist who was harassing women speaking up for their own rights. He allegedly took the phone. So he got criminally charged. The tranny didn't get charged with criminal harassment, just he did. And he had to go back over there to stand trial. When his plane landed, he got off the plane, he got arrested for 3 mean tweets. In the wake of his arrest, he was slapped with what he calls a legal gag order in the UK, a country where critics say sweeping speech laws punish everything from online jokes to private prayer. That gag order said he wasn't even allowed to speak about the charges slapped against him. Can you believe this? Now, he has a court date later this week, and after that court date, his first on-camera interview will be right here with the Megyn Kelly Show, and we look forward to bringing that to you exclusively. So I want to talk about this case, and then I want to talk about what's happening, not just in the UK, but in the European Union, because they've just passed this sweeping law that's going to affect all of our social media companies and all of us. Have you been noticing more and more when you're on your iPhone, you have to accept cookies or deny cookies? That's in large part due to what they're doing in the EU. What they do online with their sweeping anti-free speech laws will affect your life. So listen up, because as goes the life of, the Graham Linnemans in the world, so goes your life potentially. And we need to, Linehan, need to pay attention. All right, joining me now to talk more about it is Greg Lukianoff. He's president and CEO of FIRE, the Foundation for Individual Rights and Expression. He's also the co-author of the new book, War on Words, 10 Arguments Against Free Speech and Why They Fail. Don't miss a moment. Subscribe to this show on YouTube and follow me on Insta, Facebook, and X. Who's really on your side when it comes to your health? Insurance companies? Bureaucrats? Pharmacies that refuse valid prescriptions? Not a chance. Too many parts of our healthcare system are working against you, blocking proven treatments, jacking up prices, and making you jump through hoops. This is why I want to tell you about All Family Pharmacy, an independent pharmacy that's on your side, fighting for your medical freedom, making it simple to get the treatments you trust without the insurance runaround. Just order online. A licensed doctor will review your request, and your medication will ship straight to your door. It's fast, it's simple, and it's secure. Right now, ivermectin, and mebendazole are 25% off, starting at just $2 a capsule, and you can save another 10% with code Megyn10. Choose from over 200 medications: antibiotics, hydroxychloroquine, NAD+, antivirals, and more, all with a prescription included. So go to allfamilypharmacy.com/Megyn and use the code Megyn10 to save today. That's All Family Pharmacy, where your health and your choice matters. Greg, welcome back. Great to have you.
Great to see you again, Megyn.
This is getting crazy. I realize there's no First Amendment in the UK, but, we're kind of them. We've got like a toe still that connects us very much to them. We're all supposed to be part of the modern West and have shared values. And literally all Graham did was send out 3 tweets. I'm going to tell you what they are. You probably already know, but we'll bring this audience up to speed, that just got him arrested for offensive speech in the UK. 1, April 19th, showed a picture of a trans rights rally and captioned it, "A photo you can smell." 2, April 19th, in a reply to the picture and a follow-up, he writes, "I hate them, misogynists and homophobes. F them." And number 3, on April 20th, he writes, "If a trans-identified male is in a female-only space, he is committing a violent, abusive act. Make a scene, call the cops, and if all else fails, punch him in the balls." That's it. And this in the UK can get you arrested with 5 armed guards, and God only knows what the potential punishment will be if Graham does not prevail in this case. Your thoughts on it all, Greg?
Well, I think I'm going to say something that might surprise you. Actually, it's good that they arrested him because it's making people aware of how insane the law has gotten in the UK, and honestly, the rest of the so-called free world at this point. America at this point is truly alone in protecting free speech as passionately as we do, and thank goodness we have the First Amendment, because of course the unfree world is a nightmare. They've been using AI in Iran and China to bring a whole new level of dystopia, but in the European Union, in the UK, in Canada, in Australia, the situation for free speech is getting more and more desperate. I mean, just to put this in perspective, about 2,000 people were arrested per year in the first Red Scare, which was 1919 and 1920. 12,000 people approximately have been arrested this year in the UK alone, and they're half our population at the time of the Red Scare. So we're talking about a genuine free speech crisis that when you go to Britain still, and my mom's British, so this was literally very, very close to home. They used to laugh at us about our political correctness in the United States. But now they'll be like, right. Oh, well, yeah, it was rude. It's like, are you insane? And the funny thing is they're doing this to rout out fascism, in their own minds. It's kind of like,
Yeah, they're dangerous. They're genuinely dangerous. Like, I'm not sure where this goes, how much more radical they can get. They're arresting people who are silently praying outside of abortion clinics. They're really hot on the trans issue. You cannot say anything about trans activism, trans activists, the gender issue. You have to be completely woke and politically correct on it, or you can wind up like Graham. I mean, this is a celebrity. He is a celebrity over there who is very well known for these hits. And of course, our comics, he's a comedy writer, tend to be, in many cases, amongst the greatest geniuses. Really, they see the seams in the story. They're our most important cultural commentators. They come to these issues before many of us do, and they're important for that reason alone. He actually gave an interview to Jordan Peterson a year ago or so, it was December of 2024, and spoke about being canceled because he's been very hot on the trans issue. Here's a bit of that in SOT 1.
I always think of that Muhammad Ali line where he said, the Vietnamese never called me no N-word. And I feel the same way about the left. The right never called me a bigot. Right. And they called me a bigot for basic things like saying, hey, you shouldn't be cutting the breasts off little girls. You shouldn't be...
Yep, there's one non-hate crime incident.
Yep.
We can keep piling them up.
There shouldn't be men in women's prisons. It's actually against the Geneva Convention to put men in women's prison.
Okay, so he's speaking complete sense, Greg, complete sense. It's not even like here in America, we always talk about how you have to find the least popular speech, the most provocative and unpopular, and that's the stuff we need to zero in on protecting. What he's saying over there is actually factual statements. Now, the one statement about kick them in the balls, okay, that's a little bit more provocative than his other statements, but that wouldn't even come close to being censorable speech here in America.
No, that's nowhere near the line when it comes to First Amendment. I mean, basically the argument is that it's incitement, and that's literally like when you're standing outside the mayor's office with a torch-wielding mob being like, let's go burn down the mayor's office. Like the idea of like theoretically in this circumstance, if there's a man in a woman's dressing room that you should, if all else fails, punch him in the balls, is rightfully protected in the United States. And this has been going on. I mean, the scale of this is just absolutely astounding. And it's been hard to get people to really pay attention to how bad it's gotten in the United States. Or for that matter, sorry, not in the United States, in the UK. We were done a real favor, actually, by 60 Minutes, because they did actually a piece on how bad it's gotten in Germany as well.
We showed that.
And they
60 Minutes loves it.
Yeah. Oh, the host did seem to kind of be like, oh, this makes sense, and they show morning raids of these speakers, and they gave one example of like a German called a politician a penis, and that got him arrested. It's like, okay, so you can't insult politicians anymore, and they actually said
that's a day
that's even
ending
worse.
in Y. In the United States of America. I mean, everybody would be under arrest if you couldn't say negative,
part of being a free person
things.
Is you can pick on your politicians.
Well, speaking of politicians in the UK, J.D. Vance went over there and spoke at the Munich Security Conference in February and really was very frank with our European friends about where things are going there. And there was very negative leftist reaction at home to what he was saying. Like, oh, how dare he lecture them? Who does he think he is? He was spot on. And I'm going to show this soundbite, but I hope people will listen to this thinking about what just happened to Graham and to many others. I'm going to get into what's happening beyond Graham, but watch this.
The Scottish government began distributing letters to citizens whose houses lay within so-called safe access zones, warning them that even private prayer within their own homes may amount to breaking the law. Naturally, the government urged readers to report any fellow citizens suspected guilty of thought crime. In Britain and across Europe, free speech, I fear, is in retreat.
I mean, that, to put it mildly. You've got Adam Smith Connor. He's an Army vet who was fined nearly $13,000 for silently praying near an abortion clinic over there. Lucy Connolly is one many have cited over there. She was sentenced to 31 months in prison for calling for deportations of illegal immigrants on X. It's getting genuinely scary. And now you have Nigel Farage, who formed his own party over there, which is on the rise because of issues like this, who testified in front of the House, the U.S. House Judiciary Committee, this morning, a couple of hours ago, in the wake of Graham Linehan's arrest, and had the following warning, SOT 4.
He's not even a British citizen. He's an Irish citizen. This could happen to any American man or woman that goes to Heathrow. It is a potentially big threat to tech bosses, to many, many others. This legislation we've got will damage trade between our countries, threaten free speech. I've come today as well to be a klaxon, to say to you, don't allow, piece by piece, this to happen here in America. And you would be doing us and yourselves and all freedom-loving people a favour if your politicians and your businesses said to the British government, you've simply got this wrong. At what point did we become North Korea? Well, I think the Irish comedy writer found that out 2 days ago at Heathrow Airport.
Good for him.
Agreed.
Here's the, I think, what in part he was referring to. It goes beyond Graham, because you and I are swept up into this weird web of censorship that they're casting, not just in the UK, but in Europe, thanks to the EU Digital Services Act,
yes,
which is this law that has been passed that could cripple free speech, not just over there, but over here. It governs all of our social media companies, which is now the new public square. And it basically bans speech that is offensive. Not basically. I mean, it does. And it's relatively new in terms of taking effect. It was passed a couple years ago, but in terms of when it took effect, it's relatively new. And it says that you can silence or censor voices that you find offensive. It gives super broad powers to the European Commission to regulate content deemed harmful. Yeah. It took effect in 2024. And this is by using the biggest and most expansive definition of so-called hate speech one can imagine. So Megyn Kelly can get on X or Facebook and say there are only two sexes, male and female, and a man cannot become a woman. And Elon Musk is fine with that as the owner of X, and Mark Zuckerberg at this point would allow that as the owner of Facebook. But they both operate in Europe, and this European Commission can look at Megyn Kelly's tweet and say, no, that's hate speech, and go to those platforms and insist that they shut down the tweet or even potentially take down the account, Greg.
Yeah. And there is actually a lawsuit, I think that was launched last week with 4chan trying to defend findings against it under the DSA, or actually the findings against it are in Britain. So one thing I wanted to tell your entire audience is that I would love to have a case that Fire could bring that would defend American free speech rights and the rights of American companies from encroachment from European laws or laws from the UK, because this could sink our free speech here. Actually, we just wrote a book on this called Authoritarians in the Academy. Sarah McLaughlin at Fire wrote it, and it's about how China and Qatar are actually using their power and influence to limit free speech on campuses in the United States. But what the European Union, is doing, and what the UK is doing, could reach just as far.
How is China using its influence to silence free speech on American university campuses?
Pressuring different administrations to punish Chinese national students who are critical of China, to shut down events, to report. They report back situations where Chinese nationals are saying things that are critical of the crackdown in Hong Kong, for example, or for that matter, when they try to have events that feature the Dalai Lama or express support for Tibet. They're figuring all sorts of ways to exert pressure on various campuses to get that punished or shut down.
So it's basically what they're doing to the film industry here in America.
Exactly what they're doing to the film industry.
It's amazing. It's like This is the same reason why you don't let Pfizer advertise on your show, because once they control your salary, they control your speech. And what's happening is we're so beholden to China and its dollars, or, its yen, whatever, that we bend the knee when they call us up and say, don't put that in your movie. We don't want to see that patch or that poster or that messaging. And Hollywood has bent the knee. And now you're saying this is happening when it comes to speech on university campuses. And instead of having a very strong instinct of saying, forgive me, but fuck off. This is the United States of America. We're doing it. We're going along with it.
Yeah, no, and that's one of the reasons why I think we should all be concerned about this unreviewable power that the Secretary of State has to kick out anyone who, in the sole opinion of the Secretary of State, is adverse to foreign policy.
Let's talk about that, because I've defended that. I've defended that, and I know we're in disagreement a bit on this, but I really want to hear your argument.
Well, let's take the Graham Linehan case. Graham Linehan, he said some anti-trans activist things, and you can imagine under a future AOC, administration, there would be people in her administration who's like, we should return this person to be prosecuted in the UK for his transphobic things that he said. And under the law as it currently stands, the Secretary of State under that administration could kick that person out of the country without any review whatsoever. It's the reason why Trump's own sister, when asked to review that portion of regulations that gives that power to Secretary of State, said it was unconstitutionally vague and broad.
So, but I mean, I guess I don't totally understand the analogy, because Marco Rubio is looking at these Hamas-loving college campus students saying, when you say things like globalize the intifada, that is not consistent with the foreign policy of the United States, which recognizes Hamas as a terrorist group. And you're only here on a visitor's pass. And so it's like having somebody over for dinner. You came over, you got drunk, you barfed on my brand new living room carpet. So you're out. Your visitor's pass is revoked. Like, why is that not okay when they're just here as visitors? And he should be wary of visitors coming over here and antagonizing Americans and others with speech that goes against what we've stated as a policy that we support, which is keeping terrorists out and opposing terrorism.
But when it comes, it's the exact same principle of the Graham Linehan case. Like, essentially, he came to the United States because he was afraid he was going to get arrested in the UK for his trans-critical speech. And future administrations are probably, going to say things like, "It is the policy of this administration that we support trans rights and." Well,
that's a domestic policy.
And
but don't
oppose,
you think foreign policy is something that's uniquely within the control of the executive branch?
But once you actually have a policy that's as vague and broad as the one the Secretary of State has, its potential for abuse is ripe. And once again, like so much so that the one person who's reviewed it, Trump's own sister, thought it went too far. So I'm saying that this is not a power you want to hand off to anybody else. And when it comes to the way it's actually been used, I mean, even Joe Rogan noticed this case. The Rumeysa Ozturk case. This is she's a Muslim student. She was here on a student visa. She wrote an op-ed saying that Hush should divest from Israel. Something I disagree with, to be clear. But it wasn't crazy. It wasn't bomb throwing, and she was she was basically stuffed into a van by immigration people, like flown to Louisiana, and held more or less in jail for weeks until a judge said, no. And since you're a fellow lawyer, Megyn, there is a Supreme Court case on the books called Bridges v. Wixon that, of course, you can consider things like opinion and whether or not someone's suitable to get a visa in the first place. But once they're here, people who are here on a visa are supposed to have rights that are similar to ours under the First Amendment, under this 1945 case called Bridges v. Wixon.
I guess I just think when it comes to foreign policy and you're in the midst of supporting an ally who themselves are in the midst of a war, it does seem like the Secretary of State should have some power to say yay or nay on these visas that have been granted. And if it's based on ideology, I guess I'm fine with that. I see it as a much bigger deal if you go after an American citizen. If an American citizen tomorrow comes out and says, I support Hamas, I actually think Hamas is right, Israel sucks, that's fair game. You can say that, even if it's a terrorist organization. Marco Rubio cannot throw you out. He cannot do anything to you. It's just you're on much shakier ground when you really don't have a right to be here in the first place.
Well, I think of Jordan Peterson, who came to the U.S. partially because of his horrible treatment on this very same issue, by the way, in Canada. And the idea that we could just kick him out at any time, even though he's on a visa, because of speech that any other American could actually say, doesn't sit well with your civil libertarian.
Again, it's only with respect to foreign policy speech that goes against the foreign policy of the administration. So it's not some blanket, you can throw anybody out for any speech they make. It's a limited provision, and it isn't clear whether it's going to be upheld. I mean, it's been challenged. It's working its way through the system on whether that permission slip to the Secretary of State is consistent with our First Amendment, and a lawyer smarter than yours truly will ultimately have to say on that, specifically 9 of them sitting in black robes, though I take it back because not each one of them is smarter than yours truly. a couple of them definitely are, though. Okay, well, I'm horrified by this Graham case. I can't wait to talk to him about it, and I'm still kind of shocked that it's even happening. I want to talk to you about the trans thing, because this has become, when we start to bully and self-censor ourselves, the outside censors have really gotten it right. They've done their job. They've really won. And there was an extraordinary admission by Malcolm Gladwell, famed author. He's written so many great books. He's been on this show before. I like Malcolm. He definitely struck me as a bit woke when he came on the show in 2022. And I'm not. And one of the things I hate about the woke is how censorious they are. And he had, at the time, he was sponsoring a podcast by Ibram X. Kendi, which I was like, come, why? What? He's too smart for this. And he was also saying some strange stuff in the gender lane, very open-minded. And this is 2022. Look, by this point, we understood that boys should not be in girls' sports. But Malcolm was a little later to come along, but he has come along, to his credit. In any event, he moderated a panel with a bunch of people who were active on the trans issue in March of 2022, and it was over Leah Thomas, among other cases. It was at MIT. And the people who were on his panel included Russ Tucker, and our audience may remember Russ Tucker. He hosts this sports podcast, The Real Science of Sport, and he came on to talk to us about Megyn Kelly over the summer of 2024, and was very fact-based, real no-nonsense, and laid it all out that, Megyn Kelly likely has male testicles and undescended and all the stuff. This guy knows what he's talking about. He's a fact-based guy. Then there's Joanna Harper, who's more of a trans activist. Joanna's been on this program as well. And then a third panelist. So Malcolm moderates the panel. And here's a moment that happened on the panel. This is Joanna Harper in SOT 7C.
I would say that if we let trans women compete in women's sport, then we have to let them win. Not win disproportionately, but win, at least some of the time.
Okay. So Joanna's saying we have to let trans athletes win. We must. If they're going to participate in the women's sports, we have to let them win. And now Malcolm was there, and he just gave an interview to Ross Tucker, that same guy I just mentioned, and he talks about that moment with the benefit of hindsight in SOT 7B.
And at one point they turned to you, Ross, and they said, Ross, you have to let us win. And it was at that moment that I realized this argument has gone to the furthest extreme. What the trans movement is not asking for, they're not asking for, a place at the table. They're not asking to be treated with respect and dignity. What they're asking is for no one to question the considerable physiological advantage they bring to the sport, and no one to question if they're going to win these races by 5 seconds. Suck it up.
Very good point and very true. And here's what brings me to you on it, Greg. You can comment on that too. But now here's Malcolm saying he's seen the error of his ways and how embarrassed he is about the way he moderated that panel just 3 years ago, SOT 7.
If we did a replay of that exact panel at the Sloan Conference this coming March, it runs in exactly the opposite direction. And it would be, I suspect, near unanimity in the room that trans athletes have no place in the female category. I don't think there's any question. I just think it was a strange. The reason I'm ashamed of my performance at that panel because I share your position 100%, and I was cowed.
I was cowed. An extraordinary admission. Good for him for making it. Glad he's no longer feeling that way. But that's what happens when the bullies get in your head, and it's one of the main goals of, yes, the woke and certainly the transgender movement activists. Your thoughts on it, Greg?
Yeah, we all saw it happen, and the intensity with which, over the course of about 10 years, we went from, well, no, of course, biological men and women are different, and also, like in First Amendment circles, how quickly people started making the argument that, yes, it could be potentially harassment if you don't call someone by their chosen pronoun, or if even there was a law in Colorado that we opposed, for example, that was saying that you could potentially have your kids taken away if you don't use their new chosen name. And I'm like, so what you're telling me here is you're saying that someone could lose their kids if they call them their legal name. And there was so much pressure around this issue. And I'm honestly, to this day, still kind of embarrassed on behalf of a lot of First Amendment activists who actually, during this time, were more or less saying, it's like, well, yeah, no, I mean, like not calling someone who is biologically male her could actually by itself be harassment. Fire was very clear. That can never be harassment by itself. And I feel like, but I feel like what people were just afraid to admit was that they were, and it's good that Malcolm put it this way, is people were just terrified of the trans rights activists, but then started rationalizing why they agreed with them and why they weren't actually being cowed. And I think we're waking up from this to a degree. But what we're seeing in England, with the Graham Linehan case, to bring it back to that again, is the fact that this is far from over.
So what is your advice as somebody who's spent the vast majority of your adult life fighting for free speech rights on college campuses and other campuses for students who get chastised and punished by these university professors, virtually all of whom are radical leftists who don't want to hear conservative thought or just the questioning of their liberal orthodoxy? What is your advice for young conservatives going off to college now and feeling a little more empowered, certainly gravitating a bit more to the Trump movement, the MAGA movement, and not being woke, rejecting wokeism wholesale, but still under the same pressure by those in charge to say the right thing on the exam, to speak the right way in class, to have the proper opinions in mixed company?
Oh, Megyn, I could do like a couple days on what my advice would be here. But the most basic part of it is, if someone's saying that you have to say something that you do not believe is true, that you have to call someone by a name that you don't believe that is theirs, or by a pronoun that they don't believe that actually applies to them, that's compelled speech. Compelled speech is worse than telling someone that what they can't say. It's telling someone what they must say. That's totalitarian. And if that case comes up, if you have actually that situation, contact FIRE, because there's a long string of cases that indicate, compelled speech is the heart of darkness, and you have rights under those circumstances.
How about just the pronoun game in general? Because it's very annoying. I'll tell you what, this is the first week of school where we go, and we intentionally chose non-woke schools, and our son's school is definitely non-woke and very reasonable. They're not MAGA, they're just non-woke. They're old school traditionalists, the way like we used to be, where they keep this ideology out of the classroom. But our girls' school, our daughter's school, is woke, more woke than I'd like. And first day of school, all the forms are given to my daughter in her classes, asking her to say her pronouns. It's an all-girls school. They all have the same damn pronouns. Stop asking this. I really wanted her to say, I don't play that game. I'm not playing the pronoun game. But you couldn't, because the forms were electronic and they had to click something in order to go to the next box. And the forms were mandatory. it's infuriating, but that too is a compelled speech in its own way.
Yeah. Well, we've definitely seen cases where, like when it's in a live context, where people have said, I'm not playing with this. I'm not going to give you my pronouns. And increasingly, I have seen a lot of examples where someone says, like, I'm not doing this. Like when they go around the class and ask for people pronouns, like, no, I'm opting out. Where that's become increasingly kind of acceptable. Where people are like, yep. So there is some sanity returning to that, but I do think that like this is an ideology that there's been a lot of celebration of like wokeness sort of like going away. I actually kind of like my preferred term for wokeness is social justice fundamentalism. It's Tim Urban's term because I think it like conveys kind of like it's kind of like it's just this radical kind of like belief that everybody must comply with my essentially secular religion, and there's this idea that it's gone away, and it's like in some circles, and it's like no. It hasn't. It's still there. Nothing has happened like that has massively changed this, and it's going to come back just as ferociously as the political correctness of the mid 1980s, early 1990s came back with a vengeance around 2014. This is all going to come back unless people really stand up for it. And also, frankly, Megyn, if people start deciding, need to start deciding to go to entirely different institutions to figure out ways to do their K through PhD educations in different ways, favoring different ways that can't actually coerce ideology out of them, or won't want to, at least.
I really like that social justice fundamentalism. That's exactly what it is. Well, I'll be making a phone call to my daughter's school today. I just think this is insane. Everybody knows what the pronouns are of these girls. If you've got somebody who's confused, that's her issue. My daughter should not be forced to be questioning pronouns at all because some random unknown person in the school may or may not be having gender issues. I completely reject the entire discussion. It's offensive, it's objectionable, and it actually can cause harm. You do not inject confusion around gender where it doesn't exist. In any event, look, this is why you've devoted your whole life to things like War on Words, 10 Arguments Against Free Speech and Why They Fail. Your book, The War on Words, is well worth your time. Greg will give you all the arguments you need to stand up for free speech in America, which is under threat, perhaps not quite as badly as it is in the UK and in the EU, but hey, it could be a harbinger of things to come. Thanks for being here.
Absolutely. Thanks, Megyn. Take care.
All right, coming up next, Batya Ungar-Sargon. There's a lot going on we'll get to with her. Let's be honest, afternoons can be rough. Energy fades, cravings kick in, and focus goes out the window. What was I saying? Oh yeah, the quick fix is another coffee, but that can lead to jitters or a crash later. Peak's Sun Goddess Matcha is another option. Whether it's how the day starts or how it gets back on track, this matcha is not just a drink. It can be a better daily habit. It gives steady energy and helps you focus without the ups and downs. This is not just any matcha. It's organic, ceremonial grade, and grown in Japan's pure volcanic soil, far away from pollution. It is shaded longer for more nutrients and blended by tea masters. That's how serious they are about quality. This taste is smooth, it's creamy, and it's rich, not bitter like lower quality matcha. It packs powerful antioxidants to keep you sharp and steady. Right now, you can get up to 20% off for life, plus a free rechargeable frother and glass beaker. It's backed by a 90-day money-back guarantee. So go to peaklife.com/Megyn. That's PIQUE life.com/Megyn to try it for yourself. Again, that's peaklife.com/Megyn. We've got a lot of other big news to get to today, including President Trump fighting crime in Democrat-run cities and fighting the Democratic politicians in the process, updates in the Epstein story, and more. Want to be joined now by Batya Ungar-Sargon, whose new show on News Nation is called Batya, and it debuts September 20th. Congrats, Batya. That's awesome.
Thank you so much, Megyn. I have to say, you have been such a role model for me for such a long time. I know so many journalists, men and women, who aspire to be more like you every single day. So thank you so much for that, for the role modeling, for the example you set that you can be fiercely independent and never bought by anybody. and
That's
for
right.
everything you do for this country. Thank you so much, Megyn, and for having me.
You're so sweet. You're so sweet. This is your moment. This is not my moment. And God bless the folks over at News Nation, because I know the folks who run that joint. They're very smart. They're very talented. And it surprises me not at all that they took a look at you and said, oh, why aren't we hiring her? We'll get her over here. So congrats to both of you. You both have a wonderful future ahead, and I'm sure the show will be a big success. Okay, let's talk about Epstein, because that's what's happening right now on Capitol Hill. As I explained to the audience at the top of the hour, you kind of have the House committee that oversight is subpoenaing DOJ. Been underwhelmed with what they've produced, and I expect to remain underwhelmed. But then you have the Massey-Ro Khanna tandem pairing, where they're kind of going around everybody. They are trying to go through Congress to mandate that virtually all documents, real documents, be released. We'll see. We'll see how that goes. But they did have a presser this morning with a bunch of Epstein victims, or women who say they were his victims. And I'll give you an example. Here's Lisa Phillips, who says she's committed to sort of working outside of this process and making sure the truth comes out. Her name is Lisa Phillips again, and it's SOT 50.
Several of us Epstein survivors have been discussing creating our own list of names. The names. Many of us were abused by them. Now, together as survivors, we will confidentially compile the names we all know were regularly in the Epstein world. And it will be done by survivors and for survivors. No one else is involved. Stay tuned for more details on that. Because history is watching, and so are the women who will come after us. That's right. Thank you.
Okay, so I say good for them. This is like the actual men who are in Epstein's circle. This is their worst nightmare, because not all of them are pedophiles. Some of them just knew Epstein. I mean, I think Trump is in that category. I think Alan Dershowitz is in that category. Eventually, Steve Bannon was kind of in that category, because he was advising Epstein to some extent after he, got in trouble. I don't think these people did anything wrong morally, in terms of the girls. But, if the list is now up to the survivors of who was in his orbit a lot, because the real officials won't tell us the names of those who have been actually accused of bad actions, I'm not surprised the women are taking control of the situation. And I think this is going to be an even worse outcome for men who are potentially innocent of wrongdoing. But your thoughts on it?
It's very interesting, because one of the journalists asked them, well, can you give us a preview of some of the names on the list? And they declined to do so because they're worried about getting sued, which I think is a good thing, right? You don't want people randomly naming people who haven't done anything wrong. I will say I thought the most interesting thing that happened was that the lawyer seemed to dispel the myth that there was a big pedophile ring. And what I mean by that is he was very clear, and he said at one point to one of the, in the Q&A portion of the press conference, he said, let me be very clear, Jeffrey Epstein personally abused all of these women for his personal gratification. And then, and here's the key point, Megyn, he said, when they reached a certain age, he then did farm some of them out to some of his friends, which to me, I don't know if you agree with me, but it does seem to suggest that he was interested in them when they were underage. And then when they reached a certain age, one of them even said when she got too old for him, he kind of kicked her out. And at that point, he would introduce them to his friends, which does seem to suggest that those friends are not actually implicated in pedophilia, and possibly not even in anything criminal. Now, the Alan Dershowitz thing, I think, is very important, because he's kind of, for me, the reason that I don't think that releasing a full list is a good idea. I think that he managed to prove that he had been falsely accused. But I have to say, I don't think his reputation ever recovered from having been associated with the scandal. And I personally think that's kind of an unfair thing to do to a lot of people. The other thing I will just say is, I do think that the women themselves are on kind of a different page than Ro Khanna and Thomas Massey. they did not seem to want the same things to be released. I don't think they want everything released. They kept saying, is there footage of what happened to me in the hands of the government? As if the last thing they want is for that to be, God forbid, released, right? So I do think they are being manipulated a little bit and used in this kind of gross, titillating way to hurt Trump by people who see him as a political adversary.
See, I think it's interesting what you said about Dershowitz. I disagree that his reputation didn't recover. I think what happened was Dershowitz never recovered from defending Trump in the first impeachment trial. That's what, quote, ruined his reputation. Not that you use that word, but with the left. They looked at him very differently after that. They couldn't forgive him. His stories of being ignored and, ostracized in Martha's Vineyard go on. That's really what did it. It wasn't the Epstein thing. I think the left used that as an excuse to say, oh, it's that. I'm moral. I just have an objection. They didn't care about Epstein. The left couldn't give two shits about Epstein until Trump, and recently, they saw it was like an Achilles heel potentially for Trump. So I don't think that these men will have trouble rehabilitating themselves. They will have to work for it, though. And the irony of what you said, though, is Alan Dershowitz does think that the name should be released. And he thinks men should have to defend themselves, same as he had to. He's like, you know what? It shouldn't be that hard. If you didn't do anything, it should be very easy to say, this is bullshit. I never went to the island, or I went to the island and I never met with any women or girls or what have you. And the final point I was going to make on Epstein is, I've told the audience this before. I do know somebody who's very close to the Epstein case. And this person's never misled me. Everything they've told me has been true, as far as I can tell. And this person has been saying from the beginning that this person doesn't view Epstein as a pedophile, but that he was into the, quote, barely legal type. That, I don't know if that's true. I think if Epstein could have an interlude with a 14-year-old, he would have done it, and he probably did do it, and that is a pedophile. It's not the same as a 6-year-old. I accept that there's a distinction, between those two. Morally, it's not, I'm not justifying one, just to be clear. But I think that's probably right, because I think if you looked 14 or were 14, he would probably spend time with you. But if you looked 24 or were 24, he was over you. So anyway, the whole case is very complicated, and I'm interested in hearing these women's stories, as I have been in every woman's Me Too story, to see whether it's true, what it tells us about power, what it tells us about women, and all of it. And I think more sunlight, more sunlight. Trump feels differently. Here's what he said. Stop 54.
So this is a Democrat hoax that never ends. It reminds me a little of the Kennedy situation. We gave him everything over and over again, more and more and more, and nobody's ever satisfied. From what I understand, I could check, but from what I understand, thousands of pages of documents have been given. But it's really a Democrat hoax, because they're trying to get people to talk about something that's totally irrelevant to the success that we've had as a nation since I've been president. Even if you look at D.C. right now.
Thoughts on that one?
I gotta say, Megyn, I think we may not agree on this, but I just think Trump knows his base better than anybody. And when he keeps saying this is a hoax, he's not trying to convince them to drop something he thinks will hurt him. I think he feels like no one cares about this. They care about really important things like kitchen table issues, what he's doing to get the country back on track, why inflation is not going down faster. Like, people have real concerns, and they don't hold him personally responsible for this. I keep having totally normie people ask me why do I keep hearing about this Epstein thing? Like, they don't quite understand why it's such a big topic. So I'm kind of with the president on this. I don't think you get very far betting against Trump's understanding of where the average American is at on an issue. And I think he's really clocked it that this is something that really preoccupies kind of elites on both sides. But average Americans, I think, just don't care that much about Jeffrey Epstein. What do you think?
Well, I don't think it's elites on the right who are interested in Epstein. I think it's the Dan Bongino's not an elite. Now he's, part of government. But when he was talking about this on his show, it wasn't because he had some privileged position, that he was going to exploit. To the contrary, it's been people like Cash, like Dan, podcasters on the right who have been saying, what the hell? We smell a rat. We think that these people in power protect their own, and we're not being given the straight story. And we want the straight story because we do believe that powerful elites get away with this shit when the rest of us don't, like nobody else would. And that we have a right to know what these elites were doing and why they're covering for each other. Because everybody within Epstein's circle was pretty much well off, connected, or rich, you know, in one way, shape, or form. So I just don't see this as an elites issue. Not this one. I have interest in this case from a legal standpoint. And I also think Trump's very first instinct, it'd be one thing if after, you know, all these months, Trump was like, get over it. We've done some releases. I'm sick of talking about this shit. But on day one, he was like, Jeffrey Epstein, who is interested in that story? Are we still talking about Jeffrey Epstein? And it was like, what? What are you saying? Your DOJ just released this ridiculous 2-page memo trying to declare it over. That's why we're talking about it. Why are you acting like we just brought this up out of the blue? So that's really one of the things that set off the firestorm. Having said all that, it's not my top issue by far. It's not one of my top 50 issues. I just think the ongoing saga of it is interesting. So anyway, okay. We're going to pick it up on the back end of this break. Quick break, more with Batya right after this. When inflation jumps, when you hear the national debt is over $37 trillion, do you ever think maybe now would be a good time to buy some gold? Well, you'd be right. Whether as a hedge against inflation, peace of mind during global instability, or just for sensible diversification, Birch Gold Group believes every American should own physical gold. And so they created something special. Until September 30th, if you're a first-time gold buyer, Birch Gold is offering a rebate of up to $10,000 in free metals on qualifying purchases. To claim eligibility and start the process, request an info kit right now. Just text MK to 989898. Plus, Birch Gold can help you roll an existing IRA or 401k into an IRA in gold, and you're still eligible for a rebate in free metals of up to 10 grand. So make right now your first time to buy gold and take advantage of a rebate up to $10,000 when you buy before September 30th. Text MK to the number 989898 to claim your eligibility and get your free info kit. When you're buried in credit card debt and loans, it's human nature to put it off and say, I'll deal with it later. If that's you, here's something you need to know. Done with Debt discovered a little-known strategy that works in your favor to dramatically reduce or even erase your debt altogether. They can aggressively engage everyone you owe money to in September, and here's how. They know which lenders and credit card companies are doing year-end accounting and need to cut deals. So consider getting started with Done with Debt now in September. Done with Debt accomplishes this without bankruptcy or new loans. In fact, most clients end up with more money in their pocket the first month. Get started now while you still have time. Go to donewithdebt.com, speak with one of their specialists for free. Again, that's donewithdebt.com. Go now in September while they can do the most for you. Donewithdebt.com. That's donewithdebt.com. Back with us now, Batya Ungar-Sargon, host of the brand new show on News Nation. It'll be easy for you to search and find because it's called Batya. Okay, so Trump's alive, thank God. Alive and well, happy to report. We need to report it because for some reason, the loons on the left spent the entire weekend speculating that he might be dead. Based on what? Some errant report that he had suffered a heart attack or something? No, based on the fact that they hadn't actually seen him on camera for 3 days. 3 days. He had a presser. He was out in the news. And then for 3 days, he wasn't actually on camera or holding a press event. And they went into meltdown, speculating that he might be dead. It led to people like George Conway of the Lincoln Project, formerly married to Kellyanne Conway, saying things like, shh, don't jinx it. Like, if you talk about it, he might wind up alive. Like, the fervor for this man's death was in full flower over the weekend. There's one great example we have here, which is Jen Psaki. Now, she, of course, I'm sure, hoped Trump was dead. And she was one of the chief cover-uppers for Joe Biden's mental infirmity. She worked for Joe Biden for the first half of his presidency and said nothing about the fact that the auto pen was really president. And now she wants to be the authority on Trump's possible health problems. his status as an alive or a dead president, something she really should keep quiet about, given that she covered for Joe Biden. And here's what she said after Trump, miraculously resurfaced playing golf, very much alive. Here she is in SOT 26.
We went from Trump saying he hadn't heard about the rumors of his death to Trump saying he did hear about them from reports. Really can't make this stuff up sometimes. And look, we may never know why Donald Trump suddenly spent a week hiding entirely from the American public. But you don't actually need baseless online conspiracies to explain why he might not want to show his face in public right now. A newly released Wall Street Journal poll finds that the percentage of Americans who think they have a good chance of improving their standard of living has fallen to just 25%.
Okay. Batya, the man had a presser last Tuesday. He was seen on Sunday golfing. She's very, very upset that she had to go, I guess, Wednesday through Saturday. So, 4 days. Not seeing. We may never know. We may never know why he spent a week hiding. The nerve.
It's so insane because think of what they're telling on themselves. That Trump is so active, so efficient, so accomplished, so constantly working for the American people in the public eye that if you go for 12 hours without seeing him, he might be dead, right? Like, just think about what that means for what they are actually admitting. They're just telling on themselves. Of course, the real reason they wish he was dead is because they cannot compete against him. And the reason they can't compete against him is that despite the fact that the left portrays Donald Trump as some sort of 21st century George Wallace, what he actually is a 21st century FDR. He stole all of the best parts of their agenda. He's anti-war, he's pro-worker, and he's socially moderate. This is the nature of the American people, and they know that they have nothing to offer the American people to convince them to come back to the Democratic Party. And so they are left to simply wish that he dies. I mean, this is such a capitulation, Megyn. This is what defeat looks like.
Yes, it's so true. That's their only way out, is to hope for an early demise, which is just so vile.
Disgusting.
You've got Tim Walz. Okay, Jen Psaki, she's a talking head, whatever. But Tim Walz was recently the vice presidential candidate on the Democratic ticket. Maybe you would expect a little better, a little higher in terms of the rhetoric. You would be disappointed. Here is SOT 27.
You get up in the morning and you doom scroll through things, and although I will say this, the last few days you woke up thinking there might be news. Just saying. There will be news sometime, just so you know, there will be news.
Look at him. So chipper. Don't worry, there will be news. In other words, Trump will die. Something to look forward to. The absolute nerve, especially with a president who was subjected to at least 2 assassination attempts and just dodged death in recent history, to the great relief of every sane person in the nation. Now to be openly, talking about what a delicious day it's going to be, it's totally irresponsible.
I mean, it's godless is what it is. It is truly, truly godless. And I remember the first time somebody, an over-credentialed leftist elite, said to me, no, I wish that the shooter had succeeded. Mm-hmm. And I was just in disbelief. What has Donald Trump ever done to you? I mean, talk about the American dream. Jen Psaki says Americans don't believe they have access to the American dream. That's thanks to Democrat policy.
Amen.
Like NAFTA, like shipping 5 million really good middle-class jobs overseas to build up China's middle class for some reason. Defunding vocational training. Thank you, President Obama. Cutting off another avenue that working class Americans had to the American dream. Since the 70s, Democrats built an economy that was an upward funnel of wealth from the pockets of working class Americans into the top 10%, the over-credentialed leftist progressive college elites. It was wage theft of their working class neighbors. And then now these same rich people who got rich off of the mass immigration that resulted in the downward mobility of working class Americans sit there saying, oh, wow, I wonder why working class people don't think they have access to the American dream. Do you think it's because you welcomed in millions and millions of illegal immigrants to replace them in the job market and drive down the wages and live off of the government and, take their welfare? Like, it's so
exactly
obvious.
Right.
It's so obvious.
The nerve of her to use that Wall Street Journal poll, which I do want to discuss with you, but on the decrease in believing in the American dream, that it's possible for me or my children, that came out this week. And the nerve of somebody who not only is a Democrat, but worked for the previous Democrat administration, a guy who was vice president for 8 years under Barack Obama. And Jen Psaki's been tied to them all to be like, it's all Trump's fault. It's the first 7-8 months of Trump that have led to these poll numbers. It's all on Donald Trump, not a Democrat creation at all.
It's so frustrating. And you catch them in these catch-22s because on the one hand, they hate the tariffs. The Democrats have secretly, quietly become the party of free trade. I don't know if you noticed, because whatever Trump is, they have to be the opposite. So Trump said, this trade's not fair to American workers. Suddenly they're rushing to defend trickle-down economics and free trade. Okay, let's set that aside. So they hate the tariffs like all rich people, which is who the Democrats' base is now, hate tariffs, right? They want free trade. They want cheap stuff. But then they'll say, but Trump, everything he does is for the rich and for the elites. If that's true, why do the rich and the elites hate him? If that's true, why did, for every billionaire who backed Trump, Kamala Harris get 2? Why did 95% of donations to politics coming out of the top 3 management consulting firms go to Kamala Harris and not Donald Trump? Why did Wall Street pick Kamala Harris and not Donald Trump? I mean, they know it's not true even as they say it. But, data coming out of Treasury right now shows there's been a 1.4% wage increase for blue collar workers just in the last 8 months, thanks to Donald Trump's administration. Megyn, 1.5 million illegals have exited the workforce and they have been replaced by 1.8 million American workers. This is like an astonishing feat. And despite the fact that many of those Americans who replaced illegals are working in things like meat packing, you haven't seen a huge increase in prices. There's a very small increase in prices in consumer prices. It's less than 1%. Despite the fact that we're replacing people who will work for $5 an hour with Americans who expect healthcare. I mean, what Donald Trump has done with our economy is staggering. He's reduced the income gap, reduced the wage gap. He's literally bringing back the American dream for the bottom. And all you hear when you turn on cable news is millionaires bemoaning the fact, that this economy is bad for them. It's just the chutzpah here, the chutzpah, and them blaming him for everything that went wrong under successive Democrat administrations. It's disgusting.
The nerve. So I want to give a couple stats on that poll in 1 second, but I do have to play the Trump response. He spoke with Peter Doocy at the White House about the alleged rumors. The rumors of my demise have been greatly exaggerated. And Peter Doocy raised it with him in SOT 25. Here's how that went.
How did you find out over the weekend that you were dead? You see that?
No.
People didn't see you for a couple days. 1.3 million user engagements as of Saturday morning about your demise.
Really? I didn't see that. I have heard, it's sort of crazy, but last week I did numerous news conferences, all successful. They went very well, like this is going very well. And then I didn't do any for 2 days, and they said, there must be something wrong with him. Biden wouldn't do them for months. You wouldn't see him. And nobody ever said there was ever anything wrong with him, and we know he wasn't in the greatest of shape. No, I heard that. I get reports. I did numerous shows and also did a number of truths, long truths, I think pretty poignant truths. No, I was very active over the weekend. I didn't hear that one. That's pretty serious stuff.
I'm glad it's
well, it's fake news. It's just it's so fake. That's why the media has so little credibility.
So now you had Jen Psaki and others out there saying, I don't believe him that he didn't hear it. And, as if Trump ever lies about that crap. Like Trump would be like, yeah, I heard it. It was ridiculous. Screw them. He said, I heard reports that I wasn't doing well. Allegedly, I wasn't doing too well. Meanwhile, it was the other guy who wasn't doing well. I sent out all these truths, great truths, true truths. And he had done that throughout the days. And I misspoke before. He was seen playing golf on Saturday. So they got eyes on him on Tuesday at a robust presser. They got eyes on him on Saturday playing golf. But we had to go Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, which led to these lunatic conspiracy theorists on the left saying he died. And then when he says, no, I didn't hear that, but that's insane. I'm fine. It's fake news. Then they say, oh, he's lying. He did hear it. Like, what's wrong with them? These are the same people who look at our side and say we're the conspiracy theorists. We're the people who don't believe science and truth when it's staring us in the face. It's like, I know people have called them out for Russiagate and these other conspiracies, but truly, they cannot see the truth when it's before their eyes if it has anything to do with Donald Trump.
Yeah, they're completely blinded by this. And they think we're still in 2016, which actually is one of the president's superpowers. They think they still matter, and they don't matter, Megyn. I mean, you matter. They don't matter, but they haven't realized it yet. And so they're sitting there thinking that they're controlling the narrative. And when Trump just looks at them and is like, what are you even talking about? And makes a mockery of it. It's so powerful. I mean, when you think about the extent to which he is operating on so many levels, whether it's domestic policy, the economy, immigration, foreign policy, navigating these conflicts, bringing, an end to these conflicts, to wars, but also, navigating India, navigating China, navigating Russia, Ukraine, and to have the media. The Smithsonian. And they're literally, if you watch channels like CNN, they take the opposite side, literally will root for our enemies. I was watching the other day, I forget which liberal channel, and they were trying to talk up China's military during the parade and say that China's military is stronger than ours. They were like, well, we don't have that and we don't have that. Are you freaking kidding me? Is that what it has come to? You are literally rooting for China's military? Because you know that Trump is fighting China. It's so absurd. And thank God it's 2025 and the American people can see it for what it is.
100%, which is going to bring me in 1 second, by the way, it was CNN, to the blowing up of the drug cartel boat, which was amazing and suddenly has leftists supporting drug cartel boats full of drugs on their way to the United States. But before we get to that, this Wall Street Journal poll is right up your alley. The headline was, Americans lose faith that hard work leads to economic gains. It's a rather large survey, 1,500 plus adults, done in July, mid-July. The share of people who say they have a good chance of improving their own standard of living fell to 25%. Just 25% of Americans believe they have a good chance of improving their standard of living. It's a record low in surveys dating back to 1987. 42% say they strongly or somewhat disagree that they can improve it. More than 3/4 of those polled say they lack confidence that life for the next generation will be better than their own life. I mean, that's amazing. 78%, nearly 80% of Americans do not feel confident that life for our children's generation will be better than it was for us. That is just depressing. And then 70% of Americans believe that the American dream, that if you work hard, you will get ahead, no longer holds true or never did. The highest level in nearly 15 years of surveys. My God, Batya, this is just so dark. I do think a lot of it comes down to home ownership and what you talked about in terms of middle class jobs. And I think AI, too, is potentially in there because you hear about it a lot, how AI is going to be stealing all the jobs and our children aren't going to be able to find work at all, thanks to rampant AI that has no master reeling it in. But what are your thoughts on these numbers?
So I think for a long time, we saw the American dream become basically a privilege for the college educated. The working class was really cut out of it thanks to Democratic policies. What we're seeing now is a lot of these over-credentialed college elites who would have 10 years ago been assured of making it into the top 10%, but now because of AI are struggling because of a lot of the entry-level white-collar jobs are being destroyed by AI.
True.
And these people are unbelievably resentful. A lot of them have college debt. They were told they were very special. And at university and college, they were taught to have contempt for people who don't have a college degree. And now they come out of college and are being forced to work in industries that don't require that degree. And so they're very resentful. This is the Mamdani base. This is what's fueling the rise of socialism, because in their view, you know, the ideal situation would be that you have illegal immigrants doing all of the actual work, everybody else living on some sort of welfare and subsidized housing, you know, and then they can just kind of become podcasters, right? Like that's their, you know, fantasy of the way that the economy works.
Heaven forbid.
They think that labor exactly is beneath them. It's really about, you know, it's a hatred of America, but also a hatred of labor. They've been taught to have immense contempt for work that requires labor. So those are the people I think who are losing trust that they're going to be better off than their parents. But I think a much bigger thing is exactly what you pointed out, Megyn. It's home ownership. This has to become a major concern for the GOP going forward. This is what Gen Z is thinking about all the time. They're really not thinking as much about the cultural battles and the cultural issues. They're thinking about why, or Epstein, they're thinking about why they can't afford a home, which brings me to this Lisa Cook. This
I'm
woman
in love with this story.
Lied, as you've been covering it so well, on her mortgage applications, bought 3 homes, said each was her primary residence. Okay, a lot of people do kind of fudge that exact point in mortgage applications, but what makes it utterly unforgivable in this case is that she is sitting on the board of the organization that is preventing young people from being able to afford a home because they are insisting at the Fed at keeping interest rates high. So while this woman gathered for herself, acquired home after home after home with a little bit of, you know, trickery in her paperwork, she sits there and says, but not you. I'll have 3 homes and you will have none. And that is what makes this the epitome of the Democratic Party, Megyn. I always say the Democratic Party is kind of like a plane. And the base are in first class. They're rich, okay? They're the top 10%. You know, we know that 65%, 70% of Americans who make over $500,000 a year now are Democrats, okay? This is just like 9 of the 10 richest counties in America are Democrats. They're in first class, okay? And they're basically saying to the rest of the country, we'll pay for your tickets. You can sit and coach, you know, smush together like sardines right in the back. You can ride for free. You know, we'll give you welfare. We'll give you a housing voucher. We'll give you SNAP benefits. But don't you dare think that you can touch that little screen and come and sit in first class or have anything to say about where this plane is going. Or use our bathroom. We will decide all of that for you. That is the Democratic Party, and it is so epitomized by this Lisa Cook.
Oh my God. There was actually a great piece of tape that we had. I wasn't sure if we'd get to it today, but might as well play it. But this reporter, he used to work for the New York Times. This guy actually went and tracked down one of her many houses. You recall there were 3. There was one in Ann Arbor, Michigan, which is very confusing because I think Ann Arbor, she worked at Michigan State. Ann Arbor is where University of Michigan is. I think it's at least an hour away from Michigan State. So I'm not sure why she was buying in Ann Arbor. She said it would be her primary residence. It does not look like it was. And 2 weeks later, she bought a residence in Atlanta, Georgia, and said that was going to be her primary residence. But we don't think that was the case either. And then she also bought a house in Cambridge, Massachusetts, which she said was going to be a secondary residence, but it appears she rented it out as a rental property to bring in income. All of those were lies. You call it trickery. I say it's fraud. It's criminal fraud, Lisa. Lisa, that's not legal. Okay, that's how it looks to me. And this journalist, Charlie LeDuff, went to the Ann Arbor home listed as her primary residence. And guess who wasn't there? Lisa was not there. Watch what he found.
The door's dirty. There's a key lockbox right there. There's a white man at the dining room table. It's weird. I don't think she's married.
Hello?
How you doing?
Okay, how are you?
I'm good. My name's Charlie. I'm a reporter. This house is in the news. I was wondering if Lisa Cook lives here, or do you rent?
Yeah, we're just renting, so you'll have to...
I'm sorry?
We're just renting.
We'll have to talk to the owner.
Okay, you just live in here?
Yeah.
Okay, just renting?
No comment.
I'm sorry?
No comment.
We'll have to talk to the owner tonight.
Okay, the owner, would you have
Talk
a
to the
contact number? Oh.
So the person inside, before he realizes, says, quote, "We're just renting. Talk to the owner," then says no comment. Oh, my dear. In any event, he didn't do anything wrong, but she appears to have. So, I mean, and by the way, Bill Pulte, God bless Bill Pulte. He's the Federal Housing Authority guy who keeps finding all these cases, from Tish James to Adam Schiff to now Lisa Cook, is holding a presser tomorrow morning at 10. So on the show tomorrow, we will have everything covered for you. We will bring you all the latest on Lisa Cook and the others. And possibly there's a new person. We have no idea why he's holding a presser, but we'll find out. But yeah, amazing that it doesn't even appear it's a secondary residence. The thing she said was her primary. It appears it's a rental property like her place in Cambridge, which she said was a secondary. And you're right, as she sits there. And by the way, why did she feel the need to commit mortgage fraud if that's what she did? Because the interest rates are too high. Because she didn't think she wanted to pay or could pay, right? The high interest rates, those are too high. I've got to game the system. Then she gets in a position where she could do something about it, and she pulls up the ladder behind her. Like, F all of you. Like you say, I'm in a first class cabin. Don't touch my bathroom.
So right, Megyn. I hadn't even thought about that.
She's my favorite character in the news right now, by far. Okay, well, let's go back to the left being turned against. We don't like children with cancer, and we won't applaud them at the State of the Union. We don't like criminals being arrested and locked up, so we will oppose federal troops in L.A. and Washington, D.C. and elsewhere. And we don't like crackdowns on Tren-de-Aragua terrorist groups, drug cartel terrorist groups bringing drugs into the United States, which are a poison that is killing our young people. It's the number one killer of young Americans. Fentanyl, 100,000 plus dead the year before last, and almost that last year, and keep going back several years. It's taking out millions of our young people. So Trump actually did something about it and declared these drug cartels terrorist organizations, which changes the abilities that he has to deal with them as they try to bring that poison into the United States of America. Yesterday, during the presser that he held, he called attention to the fact that he dropped a bomb on one of these drug boats he says was bringing these drugs into the United States. And here is the video. Okay, so for listening audience, you see the boat, you see some people on the boat. It's got 3 engines on the back. It's plowing through the waters. It's kind of a rough ride. Yours truly would be wearing my life jacket and have a life preserver around me in the moment, because I'm not a good boater, specifically when it's wavy. As it would turn out, my life jacket wouldn't do anything for me because I'd be blown up like these drug cartel members were. And I have zero sympathy for them, none whatsoever. And yet the left, I mean, they're upset. Okay, we're already hearing, like, what did he think he was doing? Why did he do it? Let me find it. I'm going to get you some examples. Here's the guy from Human Rights Watch, the annoying group that keeps scoring all of our corporations, and if they're not woke, they get a bad grade from Human Rights Watch. Trump admits he ordered a summary execution, the crime of murder. Drug traffickers are not combatants who can be shot on sight. They are criminal suspects who must be arrested and prosecuted. Here's the former Latin America advisor to Bernie Sanders. Why didn't we just track and interdict the vessel in U.S. waters, arrest the crew, and seize the drugs, as the U.S. Coast Guard routinely does? I cannot imagine the timing of the Venezuela boat strike has anything to do with this, and then posted a link to the Epstein story. What an idiot. Then there's this guy, Ed Krasenstein. These Krasenstein brothers are ridiculous personalities of the left online. All I can say is that I hope Trump is using actual evidence that these are actual drug traffickers and gang members in Venezuela, unlike what he did with the 280 plus immigrants whom he sent to CCOP prison for being gang members without any legitimate evidence in many cases. Taking human lives is a major thing. Does drug trafficking warrant death? Batya, I can't with these people. Okay, like, do they not understand what's actually happening in our country? To your point about the elites, like, although drug, fentanyl and all that, it's affecting everybody across classes. The Susan Wojcicki, the CEO of YouTube, which is owned by Google. I mean, this is a very rich company. Her son, unfortunately, died from a fentanyl-laced pill. I mean, it's happened across classes, but these people don't seem to understand. And I pulled this soundbite just to make the point, okay? Because does drug trafficking warrant death? Why didn't we just track and interdict the vessel? Tell it to the parents who have lost their 19-year-olds to what they thought was a Xanax and turned out to be deadly fentanyl. Like, God forgive me, but the son of my dear friend Eric Chase. And that's exactly what happened to him. He came on this show when we were just born, and we were still an audio-only podcast, so you won't see his face, but you'll hear him talking to me. This is not long after it happened, okay? Tell it to him. Watch.
Come home from a restaurant.
I'm sorry, love. I can feel it.
That's right. So we get the call that he had taken what he felt was a Xanax that he bought on campus, and it was laced with fentanyl that he didn't know, and he passed.
It's so awful, Batya. As a parent, I look at these people and I say, yes, the answer to your question, does drug trafficking warrant death? The answer is yes. Yes, it does. The answer to why didn't we just track and interdict the vessel in U.S. waters is because we had the right to take them out. They were here to poison our children. They were literally coming on shore to poison our children to death. I don't understand how the left doesn't see that. They don't care what happened to Eric's son. They don't care about this problem at all, because they don't think it's going to affect them, or they don't think it's a limousine liberal issue like paying off student loan debt. And the reason I know that is because they haven't done anything about it, and they're having anything other than the reaction of applause in response to Trump's move.
Watching that boat blow up, I felt the way I feel when the same European leaders who mocked Donald Trump and mocked the United States and laughed at us come to the White House now on bended knee and beg him for things. It just made me feel so proud and safe to be an American. Yes. And it's amazing to me that the left is literally coming out and saying it, like, hands off our Trendaragua, right?
Yes,
like,
right.
It wasn't actually a mistake with Kilmar Garcia Obrego that he was a wife-beater, human trafficker, MS-13 member. Like, they didn't make a mistake.
No.
If you are all of those things and you are Donald Trump's enemy, they will back you. You are their friend. You have the Democratic Party in your corner, you know? We are all Kilmar, as AOC put it, you know? The same people who were, you know, out in pussy hats and, you know, doing Me Too movement, you know, turning flirting in the office into like the civil rights issue of our time, are now out here saying, hands off our wife beater, right? And it's the same thing here. How dare you kill these gangbangers coming to murder American citizens? And with this kind of moral authority. They're high on their own supply. They think that they have the moral high ground here. It's so disgusting. And this truly is one of Donald Trump's geniuses. It's not just that he's actually making the country better and safer and more prosperous and lifting up the hardest working Americans into the American dream. It's that he manages to bring out the lowest, worst qualities in his opponents. There is no depth to which they will not sink if they think they are opposing him, and they just keep getting shown up again and again and again. There is not a single value the Democrats hold dear that they will not turn on a dime if they think that they can use that to hurt Trump, and it's astonishing.
I can't imagine, I genuinely can't imagine watching a President Biden or President Wes Moore do this to a drug cartel, bringing drugs into our country, and having anything other than the reaction of good for him, good for him. There are certain things where you don't get partisan. You just say, you know what, that's a defense of our borders and our children, and it's about time. We've been ceding this battle for far too long, and he's done everything he possibly can to stop down, to crack down on these people. From the tariffs, which even the New York Times admitted were changing the way these drug labs were popping up all over Mexico, because he said to Claudia Sheinbaum, you will crack down on these fentanyl labs or your tariffs will go up. And guess what she started doing? Cracking down on the fentanyl labs. So they started to evaporate, so much so that the New York Times had to acknowledge it. He's closed the border, which makes it a lot harder. It's not that they're giving up. They're now trying to do the East Coast and the West Coast and in from Canada and so on, but he's fighting them everywhere. And now he's doing this, not because that one boat had all the drugs and all the fentanyl, you know, I mean, there's just endless supplies of it, but to send a message, deterrence. Here he is explaining it. It's 28A.
On the boat, you had massive amounts of drugs. We have tapes of them speaking. It was massive amounts of drugs coming into our country to kill a lot of people. And everybody fully understands that. In fact, you see it. You see the bags of drugs all over the boat. And they were hit, obviously. They won't be doing it again. And I think a lot of other people won't be doing it again when they watch that tape. They're going to say, let's not do this. We have to protect our country, and we're going to. Venezuela's been a very bad actor. They've been, as you know, they've been sending millions of people into our country, many of them Tren de Aragua, some of the worst gangs, some of the worst people anywhere in the world in terms of gangs. And we had some in Washington, D.C. We took care of them very quickly, but they're out of here. They've gone. But Venezuela's been very bad, both in terms of drugs and sending some of the worst criminals anywhere in the world into our country.
Can I just say something, Baji, that jumped out at me in that soundbite? He's sitting in the White House, and you can see some of the decoration on the fireplace behind him is now gilded. You know, Trump's big on gilding. His entire penthouse is gilded. He's gilding the inside of the White House in many areas. It's getting very gold. And, okay, it's not my personal taste for the White House. I don't care. It's like, the left can't stand this. But to me, his need to gild the White House is born of his need to clean up Washington, D.C., and born of his need to close the border and to bomb the drug cartel. It's all part of the same package. You know, he wants a pristine, beautiful, safe White House, your house, my house, the houses on the south side of Chicago and South Washington, D.C. It's all born of the same thing. It's a perfectionism. It's a commitment to excellence. It's an inability to settle for less, or this is good enough. And I always thought people criticize his narcissism. Everyone who runs for president has a touch of narcissism, some more than. You don't think Obama's a narcissist? Good Lord. Bill Clinton, you don't think he's a narcissist? Wake up. Trump's narcissism is such that you could always sense that if it could be unleashed on our behalf, it could really make a difference. And that's what I see when I see the gilding, and when I see Washington, D.C. now with almost no crime, and when I see that drug ship get blown out of the water.
I think it's a little gaudy, but I love it. I mean, it's gaudy and big and tasteless in the way that America is. We're not here to imitate Europe. We're not here to try to pretend that we have class, and that, we want to be like you guys. No, we have our own thing going. We like gaudy stuff. We like big stuff. We like to make a statement. We're not out here trying to win magazine fashion awards or whatever.
Yeah. We wear the flowered pants. Wear the flowered shorts when we go over to Europe.
Exactly. We're in our flip-flops, we're not trying to blend in. Exactly. So I think it's great. I totally agree with you. And I think, of course, the tariffs is really the proof in the pudding. The tariffs said to Wall Street, I don't work for you. I work for the American people. And that split screen with President Obama, who in the 2008 financial crisis, he came into office right after and gave $700 billion to the very crooks who resulted in 10 million Americans losing their home, including $30 billion in bonuses. Imagine being an American who lost their home in 2008, saw the crooks who did that to you get $30 billion in bonuses, and now you're standing here and watching Donald Trump tell the entire global elite, screw you, I don't work for you, I work for that guy who lost his home, and I'm going to get a factory back into his town so that he can get a job again and buy a new home. That's what we're seeing here, really. Yeah, of course, he's Trump, right? He's got a very healthy sense of himself, but he's not just a president right now. He's a leader. He really does see what is good for this country as the only thing that matters. And he has a theory of the case about what went wrong and how to fix it. And there's nothing he won't do in order to do that. And I think for a lot of people, even ones who don't agree with how he's doing it, they see him willing to take on the elites in the media, in finance, the economists, the experts, and say, I don't care what you think, and I don't care if you call me names. I am here to serve. And that idea of service is just so totally foreign to the left. There's this real kind of theater kid mentality to everything that's going on there. Even in the attempts to fight Trump from Newsom and Pritzker and whatever, again, it's like, hands off our crime, right? They just want the press conference. They don't actually have any policy to offer the American people to make their lives better.
Hands off our crime, right? Exactly. We're watching this happen with Pritzker in Illinois, where Trump is saber rattling about sending troops next, saying, quote, it's going to happen. That'll be interesting. I mean, it's going to be a legal battle because he's very limited in what he can do outside of Washington, D.C. He got away with sending them to L.A., sort of. He just got his hand slapped by a judge. The judge said you can leave the troops there, but they're more limited in what they can do. You can't use American troops for law enforcement. And so the judge found you did use them for some law enforcement, so you can't do that. But you can leave them there, and you can do all the things that you said on paper you were going to use them for, which is more in a supportive role of the ICE officers who you sent. So it was kind of a split the baby ruling for Trump out there. But you can't just send them into random cities in support of just fighting crime. Like that, you really can't do without the invitation of a governor. So we're heading for an uncomfortable showdown with Governor Pritzker in Illinois. And here's what Governor Pritzker is saying about it in SOT 17.
Hi, everyone. Governor J.B. Pritzker here. I'm here in Little Village, a beautiful part of the city. Was able to just walk down the street and say hello to some of the small business owners and the patrons in those small businesses. Just a lovely day here. No emergency, so Donald Trump understands no emergency in the city of Chicago to send troops in. But I know people are very afraid because ICE officials, ICE officers are planning to come here to Little Village. And I just want people to know that we're doing everything we can in the state and in the city to keep you safe. We'll make sure and protect your rights, but you need to know your rights and make sure that you understand that the ICE officials don't have a right to knock down doors and to take people away, but make sure you stay safe, all right? We're thinking of you and doing everything we can to protect you.
Okay. Chicago's a big city. He's clearly not in the worst area because over Labor Day weekend alone, 58 people were shot in 37 incidents around the city, including 8 homicides. So we've got 58 people who were shot, 8 of them dead, from 6 p.m. Friday to noon on Monday. So it's not all unicorns and rainbows, as the governor would have you believe. He doesn't want Trump's help. And Trump is kind of saying, well, you're getting it. It's coming. Here he is in SOT 20A. Both of these sound bites were from Tuesday.
Well, we're going in. I didn't say when. We're going in. When you lose, look, I have an obligation. This isn't a political thing. I have an obligation. When we lose, when 20 people are killed over the last 2.5 weeks and 75 are shot with bullets. So let me tell you a little story about a place called D.C., District of Columbia, right here where we are. It's now a safe zone. We have no crime. It's in such great shape. You can go and actually walk with your children, your wife, your husband. You can walk right down the middle of the street. You're not going to be shot, Peter. You're safe.
Okay, so we can't have Trump going in without the invitation of this governor. I'm sorry, but we can't have it. He does not have the constitutional permission to do it. And I think, and I hope, I'm sorry for the people of Chicago, because I wish their governor would be better and ask for help. But I think Trump knows that. I think it was just a saber rattle, because here's what he just said on it today, 20C.
So we're making a determination now. Do we go to Chicago or do we go to a place like New Orleans, where we have a great governor, Jeff Landry, who wants us to come in and straighten out a very nice section of this country that's become quite tough, quite bad. So we're going to be going to maybe Louisiana, and you have New Orleans, which has a crime problem. We'll straighten that out in about 2 weeks. It'll take us 2 weeks, easier than D.C. But we could straighten out Chicago. All they have to do is ask us to go into Chicago if we don't have the support of some of these politicians. But I'll tell you who is supporting us, the people of Chicago. And I sort of want them to let it be known they have incompetent people.
So he didn't finish the sentence, to go into Chicago without the support of the local politicians. And I think the end of that sentence would have been, is not constitutionally permissible. It very clearly is not constitutionally permissible. He cannot do it. I really hope he doesn't do it, because I don't want a world in which I'm siding with Governor Pritzker over President Trump. But I will if he does it, because he can't do it legally. However, I think that's what he's saying, Batya, that he's realized that, and that he's going to send the help to cities and states that want it. And what a great way of shaming the Governor Pritzkers of the world.
Trump has promised to abide by the Constitution and all of the court rulings, and so far he has, something that, of course, the media refuses to cover. One of his most undercovered strengths is his nimbleness. He will pivot. If he sees something is not working, or if somebody shows him a better option, I totally agree with you. I think going to New Orleans, which is extremely violent, would be a great alternative. My heart really breaks for specifically the Black citizens of Chicago, who make up 80% of the homicide victims, just totally disproportionately represented in the crime statistics. I'll just give you a few. A Black Chicagoan is 20 times more likely to be killed. A Black child is 5 times more likely. There's literally a crime apartheid in Chicago, driven by the false pieties and disgusting leaders like J.B. Pritzker and Mayor Brandon Johnson. It's appalling. And there's an incredible book called There Are No Children Here. It was written in the 90s about Cabrini Green and the public housing and how dangerous it was. In the opening chapter, it's about a child who just turned 8 years old and was given a bunch of change from his mother and his uncles and his grandmother. And he's taking the change and it's in his pockets and he's so excited. He's going to go to the store and he's going to buy something he's been really, really wanting and never had any money for. And he's so excited and he walks outside and the shooting starts and he has to hit the floor and all the change goes flying everywhere. And he loses it all trying to save his life. And I was thinking about that scene when I saw footage from a soccer game in the south side of Chicago from over the weekend, where children had to drop to the grass because they were shooting at them. it's just nonsense what Pritzker is saying. The city is not safe for the most vulnerable residents.
Safe for him.
It is so unacceptable. Exactly. So you have rich white progressives from their gated communities. You know, this is just a reprisal of the defund the police, where the most safe and secure and privileged Americans are sentencing Black children to get shot at on the way to school. It is horrifying. And it is so amazing that Donald Trump wants to do something about this. He knows he got, 15% of the Black vote. He doesn't care. He feels responsible for every child in this country. It's truly amazing.
There's no way if this were happening in Evanston, Illinois, just north of Chicago, they'd be putting up with this. Governor Pritzker puts up with it because he's banking on people not giving a damn that it's Blacks killing other Blacks or Hispanics killing other Hispanics. Here he is speaking to a local reporter, NBC5 Chicago, Marianne Ahern. Listen here, SOT 19.
You're going to hear people, especially this past weekend, 54 shot, 7 dead.
Yeah.
They're going to say the city's not safe. Would you ask your friends to ride the L after midnight or after, 9 o'clock at night even to come down to the city from O'Hare?
Look, big cities have crime. There's no doubt about it. But let's just pay attention to what President Trump is doing targeting Chicago. He's overlooking red states that have much higher crime rates.
Trump, he just dodges. He doesn't care. He takes no responsibility for his state. Unfortunately, I have to leave it there because I'm out of time. But Batya, well said on all points today. You're especially good. You're always good. You're gearing up for your big show, and I can't wait to hear more on it. Looking forward to seeing you over there, my friend.
God bless you, Megyn. Thank you for everything.
You too, girlfriend. See you soon. Okay, and we're back tomorrow with our friend Glenn Greenwald. Looking forward to that as well. Good morning, everyone. I'm Megyn Kelly. It's Monday, February 24th, 2025. This is your AM Update.
Another example of total chaos, all caused by unelected Doge guy Elon Musk.
DC elites rankled by a Doge email sent to federal employees asking, "What did you do last week?" And the possible beginnings of a power struggle between the Doge team and cabinet-level officials.
You better do it because you're not going to get any federal funding at all if you don't.
President Trump challenges the governor of Maine for flouting his executive order banning men from competing in women's sports. And then his education department's civil rights office makes it official. Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt says peace in Ukraine could come as early as this week, as President Zelensky suggests his resignation as a potential offering. And a surprise result in the German elections. All that and more coming up in just a moment on your AM Update. There is a real and growing threat to your home and your equity, and it's called title fraud. Here's how it works. Criminals can forge a single document, file it with a recorder, and just like that, your home's title is stolen. They take out loans against your property, draining your equity, and you wouldn't even know that it had happened until it was too late. Here's the really scary part. Credit monitoring will not protect you from this problem. But I do want to tell you about Home Title Lock to protect your home and your equity. Their exclusive triple lock protection will give you 24/7 monitoring of your home's title, urgent alerts if there are any changes, and a team of experts to help restore your title if fraud happens at no extra cost. Home Title Lock is offering an exclusive 25% off their protection plans. Go to HometitleLock.com, use promo code Megyn25 to get 25% off your subscription and a free title history report to ensure that you're not already a victim. Protect your home and equity today. HometitleLock.com, promo code Megyn25. The email heard round the world. On Saturday, every single federal employee received an email with the subject line, "What did you do last week?" Employees are asked to respond with bullet points outlining 5 accomplishments from the previous week. On an X post, Elon Musk said failure to respond will be considered a letter of resignation. Notably, the body of the email sent to employees did not include that ultimatum. The move prompting massive outcry from politicians and media alike. Here's a little taste of what the Sunday shows sounded like, starting with Republican Senator John Curtis of Utah. He followed Mitt Romney in that seat on Face the Nation.
If I could say one thing to Elon Musk, it's like, please put a dose of compassion in this. These are real people. These are real lives. These are mortgages. It's a false narrative to say we have to cut and you have to be cruel to do it as well. We can do both.
They're finding other ways to get people to either resign or create a pretext for them to be fired.
Elon Musk has zero legal authority to fire government employees or force their resignations. Again, another example of total chaos, all caused by unelected Doge guy Elon Musk.
Elon Musk defending the move on X, writing, quote, a significant number of people who are supposed to be working for the government are doing so little work that they're not checking their email at all. Mr. Musk says there is outright fraud in the system. The Doge team believes non-existent people or the identities of dead people are being used to collect paychecks. Reaction among Trump department heads is mixed. Sam Stein of The Bulwark, an anti-Trump media outlet, reporting on Saturday, basically every federal employee I've talked to tonight has said their agency head has encouraged them not to respond to the Musk email until they get more guidance. New FBI Director Kash Patel sent an email to his employees telling them not to comply with the request. The Department of Defense, too, sent out a similar letter to its employees. HHS, headed by Bobby Kennedy, sent an email on Sunday morning verifying the legitimacy of the email, urging employees to reply. But NIH, which is under HHS, writing to staff an hour later saying, do not comply. The federal government employs about 2.1 million civilians. The deadline for response is set for 11:59 p.m. tonight. President Trump clashing with Maine Governor Janet Mills at a session held by the National Association of Governors on Friday. As part of his remarks to state leaders, Mr. Trump called out Governor Mills for her state's lack of compliance with his executive order banning males from competing in female sports.
Are you not going to comply with it?
I'm complying with state and federal laws.
We are the federal law. Well, you better do it. You better do it because you're not going to get any federal funding at all if you don't. And by the way, your population, even though it's somewhat liberal, although I did very well there, your population doesn't want men playing in women's sports. So you better comply because otherwise you're not getting any federal funding.
See you in court.
Every state, good, I'll see you in court. I look forward to that. That should be a real easy one. And enjoy your life after governor because I don't think you'll be in elected politics.
On February 6th, President Trump signed the executive order titled Keeping Men Out of Women's Sports. The order requires federal funds to be rescinded from schools and educational programs that fail to provide fair, female-only sporting opportunities. It means no boys on the girls' field and no boys in the girls' locker room. The day after the order was signed, the head of the Maine Principals Association, Mike Burnham, told a local Maine outlet, quote, the executive order and our Maine State Human Rights Act are in conflict, and the Maine Principals Association will continue to follow state law as it pertains to gender identity. The Maine State Human Rights Act provides protection based on gender identity, which means men who are pretending to be women and vice versa. The Maine Principals Association is the governing body overseeing student sports in the state. After the testy exchange at the White House, the Department of Education's Office of Civil Rights sent a letter to the Maine Department of Education informing them of an investigation into potential violations. Craig Traynor, acting Assistant Secretary for Civil Rights, releasing a statement that reads in part, quote, let me be clear, if Maine wants to continue to receive federal funds from the Education Department, it has to follow Title IX. The Office of Civil Rights will do everything in its power to ensure taxpayers are not funding blatant civil rights violators. Governor Mills responding, quote, the state of Maine will not be intimidated by the president's threats. Maine received $250 million in federal funding this year. Ultimately, the courts will have the final say. President Trump bucking tradition, replacing the Joint Chiefs of Staff Chairman, General C.Q. Brown, with Air Force Lieutenant General Dan Raisin Kane. 5 other admirals and generals are also set up for a replacement, including Chief of Naval Operations Admiral Lisa Franchetti, the first woman to lead the Navy. The announcement posted to Truth Social this past Friday evening. President Trump writing, I want to thank General Charles C.Q. Brown for his over 40 years of service to our country. He's a fine gentleman and an outstanding leader, and I wish a great future for him and his family. General Brown replaced General Mark Milley as the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff in September 2023. His removal prompted swift backlash in the media.
The Trump Pentagon does not welcome black people. They're discouraging black people from joining.
The optics here don't look great. C.Q. Brown was only the second black man to ever hold that position.
Brown has become a target for the Trump administration as they seek to rid the government and the military of leaders who support diversity and equity efforts.
Prior to serving as the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, General Brown served as chief of staff to the Air Force. President Trump nominated him to that position in March 2020. Upon confirmation later that year, the general became the first African American to lead a branch of the armed forces, thanks to Mr. Trump. Under President Biden, General Brown became the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, a post with a 4-year term that would typically carry through a subsequent administration. However, the chairman does serve at the pleasure of the president, who can dismiss the chair if he so chooses. Vice President J.D. Vance pointing out on X, President Harry Truman fired General Douglas MacArthur. Mr. Obama fired General Stanley McChrystal. The second Trump administration is laser-focused on rooting out diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives from all facets of the federal government, but especially the military. In a 2020 address to the Chicago Council on Global Affairs, General Brown stated, quote, "I hire for diversity because they all bring a different perspective." That same year, he made public remarks about difficulties he faced as a black man in the military.
And thinking about a history of racial issues and my own experiences that didn't always sing of liberty and equality. I'm thinking about my Air Force career, where I was often the only African American in my squadron, or as a senior officer, the only African American in the room. I'm thinking about wearing the same flight suit with the same wings on my chest as my peers, and they being questioned by another military member, "Are you a pilot?"
Upon taking office, Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth announced a task force focused on promoting merit-based, colorblind policies. Retired Lieutenant General Dan Raisin Kane, President Trump's nominee to replace General Brown, first met the president in Iraq. The general captured President Trump's attention by telling him the U.S. could defeat ISIS in a week, far sooner than the 2 years predicted by other generals, a story Mr. Trump recounted on the Joe Rogan podcast.
But I defeated ISIS with the greatest generals. I had a guy who was so great. I flew to Iraq and I met the real generals, not these idiots that we deal with. And we knocked out, I defeated 100% of the ISIS caliphate. They said it would take 5 years. I did it in a matter of literally a few weeks. And we hit them hard. And he said, "So we're going to hit him here, we're going to hit him there, we're going to hit him here, there." And I said, "This guy's great. I like this guy."
Raisin Kane entered the military in 1990. He served as an F-16 fighter pilot. On 9/11, he protected D.C. airspace. In addition to his service in Iraq, General Kane was also a senior military officer at the CIA. CNN reports General Kane is well-respected and seen among his peers as nonpartisan. General Kane will need a waiver for confirmation since he has not held roles senior enough under the law. And a stunner out of the FBI. President Trump announcing on Truth Social last night that Dan Bongino, former Secret Service agent and former NYPD officer turned popular podcaster, has been named as Deputy Director of the FBI under Director Kash Patel. The president calling this great news for law enforcement and American justice. Coming up, potential for peace in Ukraine as early as this week, and the surprise result in the German elections. We continue to face uncertainty when it comes to the economy, with a perfect storm brewing as Social Security and Medicare hit a breaking point as the largest generation is hitting retirement. A smaller workforce means a smaller tax base. You pair that with our growing national debt and rising cost of living, and we could have a big problem. So what are you doing now to protect your family for the future? Gold can be a safe haven in hard economic times, and Birch Gold makes it easy to diversify a portion of your savings into physical gold. Birch Gold will help you transition an existing IRA or 401k into an IRA in gold, and it does not cost you 1 cent out of pocket. Protect your future today. Text MK to 989898, get your free info kit on gold, and get a copy of the Ultimate Guide for Gold in the Trump Era with a foreword by Donald Trump Jr. There's no obligation, just information. Birch Gold has earned the trust of countless Americans looking to safeguard their savings. Just text my initials MK to the number 989898 today. President Zelensky with an unexpected answer at a conference in Ukraine. Asked about his willingness to resign, the Ukrainian leader responding, quote, "If you really want me to leave my post, I'm ready. Alternatively, I can trade this for NATO membership if such conditions exist immediately, so we don't have lengthy discussions." He went on to say he does not intend to stay in power for decades. This comes on the heels of criticism from President Trump about the suspension of Ukrainian elections earlier last year. The U.S. and Ukrainian presidents spent much of the last week trading barbs about the negotiation process with Russia. President Trump visibly growing more and more frustrated with the public complaints of President Zelensky as the U.S. works toward a peaceful resolution. NATO membership is a non-starter for the Trump administration in the approach to peace talks. Russian President Vladimir Putin sees the expansion of NATO to Russian borders as an existential threat. Hungary, Germany, and more have also expressed concerns over admitting Ukraine into NATO. According to Article 5 of the treaty, an attack on one member is an attack on all. Admittance into NATO requires unanimous approval from all member states. On Saturday evening, Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt delivered an update on negotiations from outside the White House.
Right now, the president and his team are very much focused on continuing negotiations with both sides of this war to end the conflict, and the president is very confident we can get it done this week.
As European leaders discuss sending their own troops as a post-war security guarantee, the U.S. is taking a different approach. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent outlined some of the details on Fox Business's Mornings with Maria yesterday.
What it does not include is a military guarantee. But what it does include is an implicit guarantee that if the United States of America is heavily invested in the economic future, I call it an economic security guarantee. The more assets that U.S. companies have on the ground, the bigger interest that the U.S. has in the future of Ukrainian economy doing well, the more security it creates for the Ukrainian people, and the higher the return for the U.S. taxpayer.
An economic security assurance rather than U.S. boots on the ground. The results of the German parliamentary elections yesterday marking a significant shift to the political right, but not all the way right. The center-right Christian Democratic Union / Christian Social Union, a united coalition of two parties, winning about 29% of the vote, wresting control from the Social Democratic Party, which won only 16%, a historic low. They want to cut taxes and red tape. They would advocate for stricter immigration laws and faster asylum processing. They aim to abolish a law that seeks to get rid of fossil fuel-based heating systems in German homes. A very moderate right wing, similar to establishment Republican types in the U.S. In second place, the AfD, Alternative for Germany, earning just over 20% of the vote. The rise of the party, formed in 2013, is of great concern to many on the left and in the media.
People here feel deeply uncomfortable about allowing the far right to return to power. The nation's domestic intelligence agency is investigating the AfD as a suspected extremist organization.
Elon Musk endorsed the party, calling it the last vestige of hope for Germany. The AfD is similar to the MAGA movement in America in some ways. Originally formed to oppose European financial bailouts, the party really began to rally its staunch opposition to Germany's open-door refugee policy established by Chancellor Angela Merkel in 2015. Despite the fact that the center-right party and the AfD now together control a combined 49% of the electorate, they are not likely to work together. In Germany, the moderate right and the left typically work together and refuse to cooperate with what they call the far right, a fact for which Vice President J.D. Vance slammed them on their home turf just over a week ago.
What no democracy, American, German, or European, will survive is telling millions of voters that their thoughts and concerns, their aspirations, their pleas for relief are invalid or unworthy of even being considered. Democracy rests on the sacred principle that the voice of the people matters. There's no room for firewalls. You either uphold the principle or you don't.
What will this result mean for Ukraine and Russia and America? We'll stay on it and bring you the latest. And that will do it for today's AM Update. I'm Megyn Kelly. Join me back here for the Megyn Kelly Show later today, live on SiriusXM Triumph Channel 111 at noon East, on youtube.com/Megyn Kelly, and on all podcast platforms. Good morning, everyone. I'm Megyn Kelly. It's Friday, August 8th, 2025, and this is your AM Update.
Apple is announcing that it will invest $600 billion, that's with a B, in the United States over the next 4 years.
President Trump welcomes Apple CEO Tim Cook to the White House to celebrate another massive investment in the United States.
I want to give a measured, nonpartisan response here. You roid-addled Nepo clown.
RFKJ moves to withdraw government funding for mRNA vaccine research, and the left seethes. Federal prosecutors announce hate crime charges against the suspect accused of gunning down 2 young Israeli embassy staffers in cold blood. And what's Texas Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett like behind the scenes? Here's a hint.
I need 10 or 15 skirts from Calvin Klein.
Okay, what kind of skirts do you?
Please bore someone else with your questions.
All that and more coming up in just a moment on your AM Update. You know the feeling, someone in your family gets sick, and then you're stuck waiting for a doctor's appointment, or the pharmacy's out of stock, or you're left wondering why something so basic must be so hard. Too many American families face this reality, and that's why many are turning to All Family Pharmacy. They're doing what Big Pharma won't, which is putting families back in control and making it possible to be proactive, not reactive, with your health. This is not just some online pharmacy. All Family Pharmacy is based in Florida and family owned. You can order ivermectin, hydroxychloroquine, antibiotics, daily maintenance meds, emergency kits, everything you'd want to have on hand before you need it. Order online and they will work with licensed doctors to provide the prescription for you. Then your medications get shipped right to your door. Visit allfamilypharmacy.com/Megyn. Okay? allfamilypharmacy.com/Megyn. Use the code Megyn10 to get 10% off today. Again, go to allfamilypharmacy.com/Megyn. Remember to use my code Megyn10 to get 10% off today. Be prepared, be in control. This is healthcare that works for you. President Trump on Wednesday, flanked by Apple CEO Tim Cook, Vice President J.D. Vance, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, and Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick, announcing a massive new investment into American manufacturing.
Today, Apple is announcing that it will invest $600 billion, that's with a B, in the United States over the next 4 years. That's $100 billion more than they were originally going to invest. And this is the largest investment Apple has ever made in America and anywhere else. This is a significant step toward the ultimate goal of ensuring that iPhones sold in the United States of America also are made in America. With the mass infusion of capital it's announcing today, Apple will also build a 250,000 square foot server manufacturing facility in Houston and invest billions of dollars to construct data centers across the country, from North Carolina to Iowa to Oregon.
President Trump designing an economic agenda aimed at incentivizing companies to invest and build in the United States. The ultimate goal, shoring up national security and providing jobs for American workers. Apple CEO Tim Cook expanding on the specifics of Apple's latest round of planned investments.
And I'm pleased to announce that very soon, this is for the first time ever, every single new iPhone and every single new Apple Watch sold anywhere in the world will contain cover glass made in Kentucky. In addition to the American manufacturing program, we're also significantly growing our investments in AI, including expanding data center capacity in North Carolina, in Nevada, in Iowa, in Arizona, and Oregon. So we're going to keep making investments right here in America. We're going to keep hiring in America. And we're going to keep building technologies at the heart of our products right here in America.
Cook also announcing an expansion of semiconductor production in the U.S. In May, President Trump threatening Apple with a 25% tariff unless they start fully manufacturing and assembling iPhones in the U.S. This latest announcement falling short of that demand. One reporter asking Cook if iPhone production will ever move completely to America.
He makes many of the components here, and we've been talking about it, and the whole thing is set up at other places, and it's been there for a long time. So in terms of cost and all, but I think we may incentivize him enough that one day he'll be bringing that. But he brings most of the stuff. Look, he's not making this kind of an investment anywhere in the world, not even close.
CNBC reporting, quote, moving production of a high-volume, complicated electronics product like the iPhone to the U.S. would be economically infeasible and could take years. President Trump indicating incremental steps to reshoring production are acceptable measures to avoid tariffs for now.
The president wants a made in the USA iPhone. What are the chances that you can actually make that happen?
Well, if you look at the bulk of it, we're doing a lot of the semiconductors here. We're doing the glass here. We're doing the Face ID module here. And so there's a ton of it. And we're doing these for products sold elsewhere in the world. And so there's a lot of content in there from the United States.
But what about the whole thing?
We're very proud of it.
Can you make the whole thing here?
Just the final assembly that you're focused on. And that will be elsewhere for a while.
President Trump rounding out the event, offering more thanks to Cook and Apple in his unmistakably unique way.
I want to thank Tim Cook. He's a great, great man, a visionary, a businessman, just about every quality he can have other than athleticism. I don't know about that. I'm looking at him. I'm not 100% sure about you. You're a good athlete. I'll bet you're pretty good. I think he's good at everything, but I want to thank you very much, Tim. Congratulations.
HHS Secretary RFK announcing this week the cancellation of 22 mRNA vaccine development contracts with the feds, totaling about $500 million.
Most of these shots are for flu or COVID, but as the pandemic showed us, mRNA vaccines don't perform well against viruses that infect the upper respiratory tract. Here's the problem. mRNA only codes for a small part of the viral proteins, usually a single antigen. One mutation, and the vaccine becomes ineffective. This dynamic drives a phenomenon called antigenic shift, meaning that the vaccine paradoxically encourages new mutations and can actually prolong pandemics as the virus constantly mutates to escape the protective effects of the vaccine. After reviewing the science and consulting top experts at NIH and FDA, HHS has determined that mRNA technology poses more risks than benefits for these respiratory viruses.
The reaction from some of those on the left, swift and seething. Chief among them, official mouthpiece of the resistance, Stephen Colbert, whose late-night show is limping toward its death date in May of next year.
Health Secretary RFK Jr. just pulled $500 million in funding for vaccine development. Now, we have 10 more months of this show, and I want to give a measured, nonpartisan response here. You roid-addled Nepo clown. Counterpoint. You roadkill munching, red-eyed human Slim Jim. You're gonna kill people.
Those sentiments echoed across the airwaves and legacy media. More examples here from PBS and MSNBC.
I can say unequivocally that this was the most dangerous public health decision I've ever seen made by a government body.
It's a sad day for science in this country. Eliminating all of this research and development at BARDA is a tragic mistake that is not based on a science-based decision.
That last bit from Dr. Paul Offit, a former CDC Vaccine Advisory Committee member and chief antagonist of RFKJ. mRNA vaccines have become a point of contention since President Trump's Operation Warp Speed helped bring COVID vaccines to the market in record time. Proponents point to their effectiveness. Studies show them to have 80 to 90% efficacy in preventing serious illness, though they were oversold to the public by supposed health experts as having the ability to prevent infection entirely. mRNA, or messenger RNA technology, was discovered in the 1960s but was only approved for use in humans in 2020. Critics of mRNA vaccines point to serious but rare side effects like myocarditis, as well as questions about whether the vaccines weaken immune response. There is not a scientific consensus on the topic. However, your humble reporter suffered an autoimmune response after taking the COVID booster, as did many other Americans. But the funding cut of approximately $500 million across the nearly 24 projects will surely not end mRNA vaccine research and development either. According to National Review's John Puri, the average total cost to bring a new vaccine to market is more than $880 million. And vaccine makers will not abandon their projects if they simply have to cover a small amount more of the cost, around $23 million, that HHS would have provided. Pfizer, for example, raked in more than $80 billion in sales of the COVID vaccine in America alone. They're fine. Additionally, while HHS is moving away from mRNA-based vaccines, the press release noting, quote, other uses of mRNA technology within the department are not impacted by this announcement. Coming up, federal prosecutors adding hate crime charges against the alleged gunman accused of killing 2 Israeli embassy staffers, laying the groundwork for a possible death sentence. And a new report indicating Texas Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett is just as sweet to her staff behind the scenes as she is to her political rivals, meaning she's a nightmare.
And you have no style or sense of fashion?
Well, I think that depends on what you're...
No, that wasn't a question.
I've been talking a lot about Riverbend Ranch steaks lately, and for good reason. The ranch is just a few miles from West Yellowstone, Montana, where we go in the wintertime, and their steaks are so flavorful and surprisingly tender. Even someone like me, who does not know how to cook, can make it taste delicious. It's thanks to the quality of the beef. A lot of our listeners have been writing in, sharing similar feedback. Abigail Finan will not stop talking about Riverbend Ranch, and I feel the same. So these guys raise Angus cattle, but they've taken it even further. For 35 years now, more than 3 decades, the owner has selectively bred Angus cattle with superior genetics for marbling and tenderness. It's all about the marbling and the tenderness, creating a herd that truly stands out. Their beef is born, raised, and processed too entirely inside America without artificial growth hormones or antibiotics. And it is shipped directly from the ranch to your door. Riverbend Ranch is not just another beef company. It's a legacy of quality care and craftsmanship that you can taste in every bite. Order from riverbendranch.com. Use the promo code Megyn for $20 off your first order, and you'll be eating the same steak that my family and I eat at night. And let me know what you think. riverbendranch.com, promo code Megyn. On Thursday, U.S. Attorney for D.C. Jeanine Pirro announcing a sweeping federal indictment against the man accused of gunning down 2 Israeli embassy employees earlier this year in Washington, adding federal hate crime charges, laying the groundwork for a possible death sentence. On May 21st, the 31-year-old male suspect from Chicago shooting 30-year-old Yaron Lashinsky and 26-year-old Sarah Milgram as they exited an event at the Capitol Jewish Museum. 2 other unnamed individuals were injured in the attack. According to the indictment, after victims fell to the ground, the suspect continued firing at close range, including at Miss Milgram as she attempted to crawl away. Mr. Lashinsky had been planning to propose to Miss Milgram just days later during a trip to meet Lashinsky's family in Jerusalem. Pirro listing out the full set of charges.
Count 1, murder of a foreign official under 18 U.S.C. 1116 for the murder of 30-year-old Yaron Lashinsky, a foreign official employed by the government of Israel. Counts 2 and 3 are hate crimes resulting in death. Counts 4 and 5, the discharge of a firearm during a crime of violence. Counts 6 and 7, first-degree murder. Counts 8 and 9, assault with intent to kill while armed with a firearm. He assaulted CS and AT, those are initials, with intent to kill a person.
With the addition of hate crime charges, the government now must prove that anti-Semitism motivated this attack. Pirro outlining the evidence behind those charges.
While on the plane, he traveled across multiple state lines and drafted a manifesto called an explication on his iPhone. His explication made clear his purpose in committing these crimes that I'm about to read to you was to demonstrate his hatred for the people of Israel. When firing these fatal shots, he yelled, "Free Palestine." After he killed Yaron and Sarah, he entered the Capitol Jewish Museum, pulled out a red keffiyeh, and yelled, I did it for Palestine, after which he was arrested. He demonstrated this hatred through his words, death to Israel, and his violent actions against Yaron and Sarah and their co-workers from the Israeli embassy. He also posted one of his postings on social media, please, 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 God, please, vaporize every Israeli.
The suspect has not yet entered a plea. He is due in court later today. Congressional aides spilling the tea, as the kids say, on Democrat Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett, telling the New York Post she's the Anna Wintour of Washington, the Ellen DeGeneres of D.C., the Meghan Markle of members, a narcissistic bully. Crockett frequently generating buzz with her brash, aggressive style, from calling the sitting president of the United States an orange orangutan to this reference to wheelchair-bound Texas Governor Greg Abbott.
Y'all know we got Governor Hot Wheels down there. Come on now. And the only thing hot about him is that he is a hot-ass mess, honey.
Crockett later saying she was referring not to the governor's wheelchair, but to his migrant busing program. Then it emerged that she'd been liking posts calling Abbott Hot Wheels for years, long before his busing initiative. 3 sources who have worked with or for Crockett telling the Post, Crockett is often a no-show to the office unless cameras are rolling. She prefers to work from her luxury apartment building, where staff say she lies around refusing to come into the office. When she does bother showing up to her taxpayer-funded job, staff say she terrorizes them. A former aide saying, quote, she is never in the office and is very disengaged. She does her bullshit that goes viral and then freaks out over the most random things. Crockett reportedly rents an Escalade or similar upscale vehicle each week, rather than deigning to sit in a staffer's car. One source saying she expects her staff to drive her around while she's in the back seat, treating the staffer like an Uber driver. That staffer is expected to stand outside of the vehicle and open the door for Madam Queen. Staffers telling the Post she is mean, she's rude, she screams at them, that she is, quote, not a dedicated member focused on her constituents. One staffer saying, quote, she is focused almost exclusively on being an influencer, not a member of Congress, calling her, quote, all diva, no wow. And that'll do it for your AM update. I'm Megyn Kelly. Join me back here for the Megyn Kelly Show, live on SiriusXM Triumph Channel 111 at noon East, on youtube.com/Megyn Kelly, and on all podcast platforms. Let's talk Biden and RFKJ for a second. Joe Biden is an angry, angry man. So says Axios in its latest drop, which is entitled Biden's Private Fury. In public, President Biden likes to whisper to make a point. In private, he's prone to yelling, "Get off my lawn!" and more. Behind closed doors, Biden has such a quick trigger temper, reports Axios, that some aides try to avoid meeting alone with him. Some take a colleague, almost as a shield against a solo blast. The president's admonitions include, God damn it, how the F don't you know this? Don't effing BS me. This is the Megyn Kelly cleaned up version of Joe Biden's language. I would never say these words, as everyone knows. And get the F out of here, according to both current and former Biden aides who have witnessed and been on the receiving end of such outbursts. The private eruptions paint a more complicated picture of Biden than his carefully cultivated image as a kindly uncle. Well, not for most of us. They go on to say, Dave, no one is safe, and give specific examples about what he does, including try to bully young staff, where he just keeps trying to exhaust their knowledge until he stumps the chump to make them squirm and feel uncomfortable. I could go on, but it's an interesting look at, Uncle Joe.
Yeah, I mean, look, that's been a very carefully curated image for Joe Biden. We know that this is the guy who would very intentionally swim naked in front of female, Social Security or not Social Security, Secret Service agents. We have some knowledge of his temper from some of the things that we've seen on the laptop and other places, but generally speaking, I do sometimes get the sense that we go a little overboard with the Joe Biden's lost it. He doesn't know what he's doing. I wonder sometimes if that's all. You remember the mobster who would walk around in a bathrobe and pretend like he didn't know where he was?
Wasn't it John Gotti?
No, it wasn't John Gotti.
It wasn't John Gotti?
I can't believe I can't remember. I'll come up.
Right, my crack team will look it up.
But I can't remember his last name. But yeah, I mean, look, Biden knows about the sketchy things that Hunter's done. Right? We all know that. There's a different Joe Biden than the one that we see on TV. And I think that the American people are starting to see it. Now, what's curious about the fact that we're starting to see this from more liberal or mainstream outlets is the possibility that he's being thrown under the bus a little bit, that there are real concerns that he's going to be a problem in the general election. And maybe now is the time that he needs to get a little bit kneecapped to get somebody like a Gavin Newsom sniffing around the race.
He is having troubles on that front, Stu. I mean, he's over there meeting with King Charles today in the UK. And take a look at this video where King Charles is like having trouble getting the president of the United States to move. Here they are together. King Charles is there. He's like, over here. Over here, sir. Here. This way. Come on. It's not time to chit-chat with the guard. Here we go. That's it. You got it. And Biden's gait is so unsteady. I mean, he's really telling us he's going to do 6 more years of this, Stu, and you take one look at him and you think, I got questions.
I have many, many questions. And it's funny because the way that Trump was sold to everyone informed why Biden was the nominee and why he became president. We were told that this was a return to normalcy. And everything about this has been a lie. It's not a return to normalcy. It has been crazier and crazier and more erratic than anything we've ever seen before. We were told this is a guy of the utmost competence who is going to make every move the right way in foreign affairs, for example. And we see Afghanistan, what's gone on with Ukraine and so many other things. We were told this guy was the ultimate family man, right? And here's a guy who won't even acknowledge his 7th grandchild, won't even acknowledge this poor little 4-year-old girl exists. She had no input into what Hunter Biden's activities were. You know, we were told this guy was a good guy. And I think that's kind of fundamentally where many people in the middle of the 2020 election that didn't have partisan ideology fell. They saw Donald Trump. They didn't like the things that he said, or they believed some of the hype on some of the allegations against him, or whatever it was. They didn't like him. And they said, you know what? I'll go with this normal family man who will at least be competent and won't be yelling at people, and he won't be tweeting so much. Well, I mean, you've cut the tweets down by a significant percentage, and I don't know that was worth it, because everything else you were promised with Joe Biden, you've received the opposite. And I just, the left wants this to be a Trump-Biden contest because they just hope people will remember that feeling. They didn't like Donald Trump. Maybe when he's on TV again, they'll all remember they don't like him, and instead will ignore what Joe Biden has done and his performance has been like the past few years. If this election's about Joe Biden, I just don't know how he could win it.
I mean, it's crazy because he's 80 years old now, Dave. Trump is 77. Look at Trump in Iowa going into the Dairy Queen. I mean, completely slaying, as my 12-year-old daughter would say, slay queen, slay the day, slaying the crowd. Look at the difference of 3 years and just the vibrance, of each man. Watch.
Everybody wants a blizzard. What the hell is a blizzard? And take care of the people, okay? Will you take care of them for me? I will do the blizzard thing, all right?
Just so funny. And then he hands out the blizzards. And then let's not forget what happened when he went in front of the UFC to watch a match the other day. Watch this. Look at that. Look at that. He's walking out to Kid Rock's American Badass while Joe Biden's like, King Charles, steady me, old chap. Where do I look? What should I do?
Look, I mean, Trump is, I know these guys from New York. I mean, Trump is just one of these guys. He likes to party. He likes to be the center of attention. He always has. You can go back to the 80s. You can go back to Studio 54. This is who Trump is. He's clearly a much more spry 77 than Joe Biden is, at 80. So Democrats keep saying that that's the contrast that they want, that they think Biden's better off, I guess because he already won in 2020. But I think they should be a little careful what they wish for as far as that goes. And I do think it's worth pointing out, because I've been having a hard time trying to figure out why more Democrats aren't saying maybe we do need a primary. I think it's important to remember that Joe Biden is in many ways the third term of Barack Obama. And those are the people he has around him. Those are the people who run his White House. And so that may be the answer, that the old Obama team that has been in control of the Democrat Party for 16 years now, that they're not ready to hand over control to a Gavin Newsom. And I'm starting to wonder if that's part of the dynamic that's keeping everybody behind Joe Biden. Because, he looks ridiculous.
Right. He truly looks feeble, Stu. You look at that video with King Charles, he looks feeble. And of course, we could spend an hour just butting the sound bites together and the videos together to show similar instances. And Trump is robust. And Ron DeSantis is in his mid-40s. I mean, forget Trump. I mean, DeSantis is a young, fit, life ahead of him man who's got basically toddlers in the governor's mansion down in Florida. So this is quite the pickle for the Democrats, because they know it. And maybe Dave's right. Maybe the Axios piece and some of the other questions that are starting to percolate are the reasons behind it. Look, you did the tough thing during COVID. You paid your people and pulled your business through the pandemic. And now doing the tough thing could qualify you for up to $26,000 per employee at covidtaxrelief.org. Government funds are available to reward companies with 2 or more employees who stayed open during COVID. This is not a loan, and you don't have to pay it back. The program's complicated, but no one knows more about it than the CPAs and tax experts at covidtaxrelief.org. You pay nothing up front. They do all the work and share a percentage of the cash they get you. Businesses of all types, including nonprofits and churches, can qualify, including those who took PPP loans, even if you had increases in sales. You did the tough thing for your employees during COVID. Now let covidtaxrelief.org help get you up to $26,000 per employee. Visit covidtaxrelief.org. That's covidtaxrelief.org, covidtaxrelief.org. Hey, thanks so much for watching. If you like what you just saw, hit the subscribe button for more clips and full episodes. The jury doesn't yet have the case, but the prosecution is in the middle of closing arguments right now. I have a soundbite of how that's going, which I'll play in 1 second. But first, Eric, I heard you on my friend Nancy Grace on her podcast, which I listen to every night. I love you guys all on the Nancy Grace podcast.
Thank you.
And you were saying, given the fact that you represent the family of the housekeeper who died on the property and who Alec said to her sons, don't worry, I'm going to sue myself basically on your behalf. I'm going to give you the money. Turned out he got $4.3 million. He didn't give those boys 1 cent. And you stepped in to help those kids. Okay, so that's your kind of role in this. And given that role, you have a lot of connections in this whole case. And yesterday there was mystery about a possible note. A note did go to the judge. Both counsel for the defense and the prosecution talked to the judge about it. We don't know, but there was reporting that somebody overheard them say it was about a juror. We can't really afford to lose many more jurors.
No.
We only have 2 alternates.
No.
So we got to protect the remaining jurors. And you had heard a rumor about what it might be about. If you could tell us what that was and whether you think that wound up being true. Because right now, as far as I understand, the current jury remains seated as it was 24 hours ago.
Yeah, I have a podcast, Cup of Justice, that's a highly rated podcast, and we get a lot of good tips. And I've gotten very close to Creighton Wooders during this trial. In fact, I trade texts with him, beginning at 5 o'clock in the morning to 7 o'clock almost every morning, where we, strategize, and he'll ask me a question. What do you think? And he's so receptive, just like Dave, I'm sure, is during a trial, to take anything that somebody's going to give and maybe it makes sense. And one of my listeners said that there was a rumor that one of the jurors possibly had made some statements during the trial, which would indicate where that juror was leaning. Now, I don't know any truth to that. I'm told that that person may have sent an email directly to the judge, and that's all I know. There's nothing that's been released. And then this morning, we also had a delay in getting the closing argument started when there was a at the bench meeting that lasted about 12 minutes. And I had heard that maybe something happened at Brazil. So we have a number of different things going on. And this judge wants to, you're hearing a plane in the black background. He wants to land this plane. He wants to deliver the evidence in this case to the jury because it's gone on far too long.
So, Dave, do you think we should assume that did not pan out? Because, as Eric was saying on Nancy's show yesterday, the rumor was that this juror had said, I think he's innocent. And if a juror says that in the course of a trial, or I think he's guilty in the course of the trial, they're gone. It's over for that jury. You're bounced. And so in this case, it would be the prosecution who would say, she's gone or he's gone. The fact that didn't happen, I would assume suggests they weren't able to confirm any of that.
Correct. So that's good because you don't want jurors to make up their minds before all the evidence is in and to communicate that to other jurors. That's where it's a no-no. You can have your own thoughts, but you can't communicate that to others. And so I think that's probably a false rumor. I'm glad that Eric reported it because you want this trial to be as fair as possible. I was concerned by the reports that 2 jurors were crying when Alec Murdaugh took the stand in his direct examination. That to me was a problem. Prosecutors never want to see that. But that was a Thursday Alec Murdaugh. Friday Alec Murdaugh, when he was under a withering cross-examination, was very different. He wasn't as sympathetic. He was combative. You saw him for the liar that he is. And hopefully those jurors who were crying on Thursday had a different opinion of him on Friday.
Yeah, you saw.
I got to tell you, I'm scared, guys. I think he did it. I've said this openly. My analysis as a lawyer who's been watching this case is he did it, but I'm scared the jury might not get it. I just think, he was kind of charming up there, Eric. And I realized that the cross brought out some very valid points about what a bad guy this is. He was kind of charming and he talked to the jury in their language in this real colloquial way, like I'm bonding. The brother, John Marvin, he was really likable too. He's kind of vouching for Alec. I'm worried this jury's not going to be able to get past that Murdaugh name and how nice this man seemed. And just sort of chalk it up to, financial crimes, that doesn't mean he killed them.
Well, from John Marvin's standpoint, Dave and I would have asked the same exact 4 questions. Do you love your family? Do you love your brother? It would hurt the family name if your brother was convicted of double murder. And oh, by the way, he didn't tell you for 2 years that he was at the kennel, and I would have sat down and that would have neutralized John Marvin. As far as Alex goes, this is a referendum on Alex. This trial started out as a scientific trial. We thought it was going to be about blood, DNA, and GSR. Then it moved to a technological trial of phones, of phone mapping, of videos, and then OnStar. And now, after last Thursday and Friday, it's a referendum on Alex. Are you going to believe him? Look, he said that everybody in this trial has lied. Blanca lied about the Vineyard Vine shirt. Shelley Smith lied about the blue tarp and about the 30 to 40-minute conversation that they supposedly had. Mark Tinsley lied about the meeting they had at the Trial Lawyers Association about the Mallory Beach case. Sled has lied. Marion, the sister-in-law, has lied. T.C. Smith, the African-American sheriff yesterday, who said he never asked me permission to carry a badge or a blue light. And of course, the media has lied. And Alex has told you, I'm a drug addict, I'm a thief, and I'm a liar. And it's only when the devil was at the door, Megyn, did he say, hey, I admit I was at the kennel, even though I never told my son, my only living son for 2 years. I lied to him about the last conversation and meetings and dealings with your mother and your brother. But because I've told you that today, you need to believe me and not anybody else. And I just think, I believe he's guilty. I believe that there's at least 10 jurors that believe he's guilty. And if people are going to listen to the judge's instructions and they're going to have to deliberate, it's my hope that people will keep an open mind and let the evidence show you that he did it. Look, if you brought Cyril Wecht, Henry Lee, or the best pathologist that Dave has ever used, the conclusion would be the same. All the evidence points to Alex.
And nobody else. But 10 jurors, why instead of 12?
Well, I think that there's always two jurors that may be swayed by a closing argument and they walk into the jury room. I've heard a lot of people say, well, I think he's guilty, but I don't think the state proved it. So let's say two people walk in there with that concept of, I do believe he did it, but I don't think the state met its burden. Then it's up to the other 10 jurors who had their own set of 2 eyes and 2 ears to educate those people. And hopefully they have an open mind. The problem that we have in these kind of cases is if people have a closed mind and they refuse to deliberate and they refuse to listen to reasonable arguments. Remember, it's reasonable doubt. And Dave will talk about that. It's not any doubt. It's got to be a justifiable, reasonable doubt. You know, we all have doubts in life, but then they may be irrational and not reasonable.
Look, you did the tough thing during COVID. You paid your people and pulled your business through the pandemic. And now doing the tough thing could qualify you for up to $26,000 per employee at covidtaxrelief.org. Government funds are available to reward companies with 2 or more employees who stayed open during COVID. This is not a loan, and you don't have to pay it back. The program is complicated, but nobody knows more about it than the CPAs and tax experts at covidtaxrelief.org. You pay nothing up front. They do all the work, and then they share a percentage of the cash they get for you. Businesses of all types, including nonprofits and churches, can qualify, even those who took PPP loans and even those who had increases in sales. You did the tough thing for your employees during COVID. Let covidtaxrelief.org do the tough thing for you and get you up to $26,000 per employee. It would be tough for you to do. It's actually not that tough for covidtaxrelief.org. They know exactly what they're doing. And if you qualify, they're going to get this for you. covidtaxrelief.org, covidtaxrelief.org. Hey, thanks so much for watching. If you like what you just saw, hit the subscribe button for more clips and full episodes. To jump right to, okay, we have to contextualize the terror, which they don't use the word terror, just the violence, in the context of 75 years of settler colonial occupation. Oh, tell us, what side are you on? It's hard for us to glean. They go on to say, as educators, it's our duty to stand by the principles of critical inquiry and learning. Well, that's true, but you've completely abandoned your duty. To hold the university as a space for conversation that foregrounds historical truths. And then they go on to say, we're also deeply troubled by the lack of concern and care for Palestinian and Muslim students at many of our universities, as well as efforts to clamp down on student organizing and free speech. Leave the Students for Justice for Palestine students alone. Leave them alone. Let them go out there and chant that Israel has no right to exist, or kill the Jews, or gas the Jews, or whatever happens to be the slogan du jour. They're the ones who are the real victims. Just ask Karine Jean-Pierre. So these people, you're right. They have access to our kids at all of these elite universities. Bill Ayers founded Weather Underground, who you mentioned. He's at University of Illinois. His wife, Bernadine Dorn, she was on the FBI's 10 Most Wanted. She's at Northwestern Law School. You're right. They got into these universities and we mocked them and we kind of scoffed at it. Like, this is absurd. And yet they're creating their own new terror adjacent network.
Of course. I mean, I suppose it already existed because they were literally terrorists in the 1960s. So the network has been festering for a long time. And we all mocked it. We said 5 or 6 years ago, we said, oh, look at these crazy little snowflakes on the college campuses. Just wait until they get into the real world and then they'll learn a lesson or two. And that didn't happen. They taught us all a lesson or two. They taught us all a lesson about political power. Where these sociology professors who support terrorism give away the game, though, is just after the justification, because they say, well, we oppose colonialism and settlements, and the implication is they oppose the establishment of the State of Israel. And one could even grant all of their questions and say, yes, the Israel-Palestine conflict is a very long one. It's gone on in its present form for more than a century, and it's gone on in some form or another for millennia at this point. So yes, there are all sorts of complexities to it. In no circumstance, justified by none of those complexities, can one attack civilians and commit acts of terrorism and rape, kill, pillage, and burn innocent people. If one wants to make an argument that the Palestinians are entitled to some form of war or some form of state or whatever, then in order to make any argument at all, you have to subject that argument to reason. And fortunately, we in the West have something called just war theory, and it dates all the way back to antiquity. It goes back to Cicero, perhaps even further back, and it's developed by people like St. Thomas Aquinas and many great thinkers since then. And it means that there are certain criteria that must exist in order to justify, one, going to war, and two, conducting war. And those are related but distinct fields. And one can think about it and have a discussion about it and make sure that you dot your T's and cross your I's while you are engaging in war. And there is no argument whatsoever, according to any ethical or moral view, that would justify acts of terrorism against civilians. Now, have these sociologists ever even considered just war? Have they ever read a serious philosopher in their lives? Probably not. But it just shows you how hollow the university has become, because they dress up their arguments in all this fancy jargon with their nice little hats and diplomas and university robes from the ivory tower, but it's all completely absent any actual intellectual rigor or tradition. It is nothing but a facade for their naked, appetitive political interests to bludgeon the people that they consider to be their enemies. And then they'll go and sip high tea afterwards in Harvard Yard. But it's all a farce for the most ruthless, brutal, thuggish kind of behavior that one could expect.
Okay, because I am an OCD type person, I have to say it's cross your T's and dot your I's. You had one of those
I was so close.
You've heard bedding and apparel brands say they're the softest and most comfortable, right? But do they promise it? At Cozy Earth, you get the softest, most luxurious feeling fabric guaranteed. That means if you do not love Cozy Earth's bamboo sheets, you have 100 days to get your money back. But they're not worried about refunds, because once you try Cozy Earth, you're hooked for life. Start with Cozy Earth's best-selling bamboo sheet set, made of 100% premium viscose from bamboo. Super soft, ethically sourced sheets which regulate your temperature, keeping you cool in the summer and cozy in the winter. And it's not just sheets. They have pajamas, loungewear, bath towels, and much more. Unbelievably soft, unforgettably comfortable, the coziest way to make your home a sanctuary. And don't forget Cozy Earth's guarantee. All of their products can be returned or exchanged within 100 days and include an additional 10-year warranty against defects. CozyEarth.com, enter code Megyn at checkout for up to 40% off. CozyEarth.com, promo code Megyn. Hey, thanks so much for watching. If you like what you just saw, hit the subscribe button for more clips and full episodes. Good morning, everyone. I'm Megyn Kelly. It's Tuesday, April 15th, 2025. This is your AM update.
Last night, we experienced an attack not just on our family, but on the entire Commonwealth of Pennsylvania here at the governor's residence.
Disturbing new details about the suspect in the arson attack on Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro's residence.
How can I return him to the United States? I smuggle him into the United States, or what do I do?
President of El Salvador, Nayib Bukele, saying he will not return a suspected MS-13 gang member to the U.S. Federal authorities investigate a disturbing plot allegedly by a Wisconsin teen to kill President Trump. And the all-female Blue Origin spaceflight goes off without a hitch and without much time and space. All that and more coming up in just a moment on your AM Update. 1 in 2 adults have high blood pressure. Many don't even know it. That's a ticking time bomb. But here's the good news. You have the power to take control naturally with 120 Life. 120 Life is a blend of great tasting super fruit juices that can actually help lower your blood pressure naturally. 120 Life is formulated with ingredients that have been shown to support healthy blood pressure levels. It's trusted by hundreds of health professionals, and people have seen real measurable results. You can try it yourself risk-free with their 2-week trial. Just go to 120life.com. and use the code MK to save 15% and get free shipping. You can track your progress with a simple blood pressure monitor, watch your numbers drop, and feel the difference. They are so sure that 120 Life can noticeably lower your blood pressure in 2 weeks that they will give you your money back if you're not satisfied. So you have nothing to lose but those high blood pressure numbers. Go to 120life.com. That's 120life.com. And remember to use the code MK to save 15% off your order. This is serious. This is your life we're talking about. 120 Life can help. Take control of your life and your health today. Disturbing new details in the arson attack against Democrat governor from Pennsylvania, Josh Shapiro's home. 38-year-old suspect Cody Balmer, turning himself into police, held on state charges including attempted murder, aggravated arson, and terrorism, with the likelihood of federal charges still to come. CNN reporting investigators believe mental health issues may be a factor in this attack. Mr. Balmer admitting to making Molotov cocktails with lawnmower gasoline and beer bottles. The suspect telling police he walked about 1 hour from his home in Harrisburg to the governor's home early Sunday morning. The affidavit alleging security cameras captured Mr. Balmer breaking 2 windows with a hammer, throwing 1 Molotov cocktail through a broken window, and climbing in through the other. Once inside, according to the affidavit, Mr. Balmer tossed a second bottle to further spread the flames. Governor Shapiro and his family were awoken around 2 a.m. by state troopers, alerting them to the fire. Thankfully, there were no injuries. Photos of the aftermath showing extensive damage to the home. The governor speaking out in a Sunday press conference.
Last night, we experienced an attack not just on our family, but on the entire Commonwealth of Pennsylvania here at the governor's residence. I spoke a couple hours ago with Director Kash Patel of the FBI. He promised all of the resources of the federal government. He was extremely kind and courteous and thoughtful in his conversation with me. And I thanked him and the women and men of the FBI and the President of the United States for their support. Lori and I are overwhelmed by the prayers and the messages of support that we've received from all across Pennsylvania and all across the United States.
Authorities say Mr. Balmer admits to harboring hatred toward Governor Shapiro. The affidavit reading, quote, Balmer was asked specifically what he would have done if Governor Shapiro found him inside of his residence, to which Balmer advised he would have beaten him with his hammer. Mr. Balmer's social media presence suggesting anti-government views against both Democrats and Republicans. NBC reporting in 2022, Mr. Balmer posted an image of a Molotov cocktail with the words, "Be the light you want to see in the world." Lawmakers from both sides of the aisle speaking out against political violence. Former President Biden posting to X, quote, "There is no place for this type of evil in America. And as I told the governor yesterday, we must stand united against hatred and violence." Vice President J.D. Vance posting to X, "Thanks be to God that Governor Shapiro and his family were unharmed in this attack. Really disgusting violence, and I hope whoever did it is brought swiftly to justice." President Trump speaking out from the Oval.
The attacker was not a fan of Trump, I understand, just from what I read and from what I've been told. The attacker basically wasn't a fan of anybody. It's probably just a whack job. And certainly a thing like that cannot be allowed to happen.
Mr. Balmer has a criminal history, in 2015 pleading guilty to forgery and theft, again in 2016 pleading guilty to forgery. Mr. Balmer also expected in court in a matter of days relating to a 2023 assault charge. President of El Salvador, Nayib Bukele, visiting the White House today to advance cooperation with the Trump administration in cracking down on foreign gang members illegally living in the U.S. Mr. Bukele agreeing in February to accept deported illegal aliens from the U.S. in exchange for a small fee. Reporters in the Oval pressing administration officials on the status of Kilmar Albrego Garcia, an illegal immigrant from El Salvador, previously found by 2 immigration judges to have ties to MS-13. In 2019, Mr. Garcia was ordered deported, but then convinced an immigration court to protect him from being sent to one country, El Salvador, claiming that he could face gang violence there. The DOJ acknowledging in March Mr. Garcia, who is deportable, the question is to where, was loaded onto a plane destined for El Salvador due to, quote, an administrative error, end quote. Last week, the Supreme Court ruling a lower court may have overstepped its authority by ruling the federal government must facilitate and effectuate Mr. Garcia's return. The DOJ providing daily status updates to the court on Mr. Garcia now, stating he is held in the Terrorism Confinement Center and is in good health. Attorney General Pam Bondi weighing in from the Oval.
That's up to El Salvador if they want to return him. That's not up to us. The Supreme Court ruled, President, that if, as El Salvador wants to return him, this is international matters, foreign affairs. If they wanted to return him, we would facilitate it, meaning provide a plane.
Deputy Chief of Staff for Policy Stephen Miller elaborating on the Supreme Court's ruling.
It's very arrogant even for American media to suggest that we would even tell El Salvador how to handle their own citizens as a starting point. As 2 immigration courts found that he was a member of MS-13. When President Trump declared MS-13 to be a foreign terrorist organization, that meant that he was no longer eligible under federal law, which I'm sure you know, you're very familiar with the INA, that he was no longer eligible for any form of immigration relief in the United States. A district court judge tried to tell the administration that they had to kidnap a citizen of El Salvador and fly him back here. That issue was raised to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court said the district court order was unlawful and its main components were reversed 9-0 unanimously, stating clearly that neither Secretary of State nor the president could be compelled by anybody to forcibly retrieve a citizen of El Salvador.
Mr. Miller going on to say if Mr. Garcia were sent back to the United States, he would be deported a second time. CNN White House correspondent Caitlin Collins asking President Bukele if he has plans to return Mr. Garcia.
How can I return him to the United States? Like I smuggle him into the United States, or what do I do? Of course, I'm not going to do it. It's like, the question is preposterous. How can I smuggle a terrorist into the United States? I don't have the power to return him to the United States. We're not very fond of releasing terrorists into our country.
Pressed again by Ms. Collins about returning Mr. Garcia, President Trump saying,
and they said that it must be facilitated.
Why don't you just say, isn't it wonderful that we're keeping criminals out of our country?
Mr. Trump then saying the U.S. will work with El Salvador to remove as many illegal aliens from this country as possible. Coming up, federal authorities investigating a Wisconsin teenager for allegedly plotting to kill President Trump. And the details are alarming. And the all-female space crew, including pop star Katy Perry, returns safely to Earth after a trip that took less time than it would to load your dishwasher. As President Trump is settling into his new administration, one of the top Democrats in Congress aiming to undermine the Trump agenda is Democrat Senator Dick Durbin of Illinois. And according to our sponsor, the Electronic Payments Coalition, Senator Durbin has a new plan, a government takeover of your credit card. Today, Americans have thousands of choices in credit cards, but they say Senator Durbin's plan will result in less competition and less security, which means more risk for your credit and your identity. You can learn more for yourself at guardyourcard.org, and you could consider telling your senators to stop Dick Durbin's government takeover of your credit card before it's too late. Federal authorities investigating a disturbing case out of Wisconsin involving a suspected plot to assassinate President Trump by a 17-year-old named Nikita Kassab. In March, state authorities conducting a wellness check on the home of Tatiana Kassab and Donald Mayer, following a request from Mr. Mayer's mother. Kassab's step-grandmother telling local police she was unable to contact the family and learned from the high school that Kassab had not attended in 2 weeks. Authorities discovering Kassab's mother and stepfather deceased, both bodies badly decomposed with visible bullet wounds, covered in blankets. Kassab nowhere to be found. His stepfather's car and the family dog missing. Waukesha authorities alleging Kassab fatally shot his parents and lived with the bodies for weeks before fleeing with the dog. He was arrested by local authorities in Kansas, discovered with thousands in cash, a smashed home safe, a number of electronic devices, his stepfather's gun, and ammo. Wisconsin state authorities slapping Kassab with a slate of charges, including 2 counts of first-degree murder, 2 counts of hiding a corpse, theft of property, and operating a motor vehicle without the owner's consent. The 34-page document reading, quote, "The killing of his parents appeared to be an effort to obtain the financial means and autonomy necessary to carry out his plan. An FBI review of documents discovered by state police include a manifesto in which they say Kassab calls for the assassination of President Trump to, quote, foment a political revolution in the United States and, quote, save the white race from Jewish-controlled politicians. According to the warrant, Kassab allegedly studied an image with, quote, directions on how to extend the range of an attack by drone and ways to avoid detection. The instructions provide direction to use a small dropper to drop an explosive Molotov cocktail or very strong topical poison. Federal authorities have yet to formally charge Kassab. The suspect, currently held on $1 million bond in Waukesha County Jail, is set for a May 7th arraignment relating to the state charges. The ladies of the Blue Origin space crew back safely on Earth after a brief, and we do mean brief, trip to space. The all-female crew, including Blue Origin founder Jeff Bezos' fiancée, Lauren Sanchez, pop star Katy Perry, TV host Gayle King, film producer Carrie Ann Flynn, civil rights activist Amanda Wynn, and NASA rocket scientist Aisha Bowe, blasting into space in a round trip totaling 10 minutes and 21 seconds. The New Shepard rocket spending about 3 minutes just beyond the Earth's atmosphere. The group lauded by journalists covering the event for Blue Origin, who sounded almost like they were watching an Apollo mission.
2 days, becoming a crew, becoming a team.
After you go through an experience like this, it's more than a team. It's almost like a family.
That intensive training consisted of learning how to enter and exit the vessel, buckle their seatbelts, and talk to mission control. Katy Perry and Gayle King kissing the ground upon their return. Jeff Bezos swooped up Lauren Sanchez like she was just back from a trip to Iraq. Miss Sanchez offered this profundity just back from her flight.
Earth looked it was so quiet. It was just quiet. And
is it what you expected?
No.
Better?
Yeah. I don't think you can describe it. Because, you know what I was saying? It was like quiet, but then also really alive. And you look at it and you're like, we're all in this together.
Super quiet, but also really alive. And that'll do it for your AM Update. I'm Megyn Kelly. Join me back here for the Megyn Kelly Show, live on SiriusXM Triumph Channel 111 at noon East, on youtube.com/Megyn Kelly, and on all podcast platforms. Good morning, everyone. I'm Megyn Kelly. It's Wednesday, February 19th, 2025. This is your AM Update.
I hear that, they're upset about not having a seat. Well, they've had a seat for 3 years and a long time before that. This could have been settled very easily.
President Trump responds to the Ukrainian president's complaints about being left out of initial peace negotiations.
We were able to get in the room and really articulate what are my powers, what are my authorities.
New York Democrats revolt over Mayor Eric Adams' immigration cooperation with the Trump administration. And President Trump's labor nominee set to face some friendly fire on the Hill. All that and more coming up in just a moment on your AM Update. We continue to face uncertainty when it comes to the economy, with a perfect storm brewing as Social Security and Medicare hit a breaking point as the largest generation is hitting retirement. A smaller workforce means a smaller tax base. You pair that with our growing national debt and rising cost of living, and we could have a big problem. So what are you doing now to protect your family for the future? Gold can be a safe haven in hard economic times, and Birch Gold makes it easy to diversify a portion of your savings into physical gold. Birch Gold will help you transition an existing IRA or 401k into an IRA in gold, and it does not cost you 1 cent out of pocket. Protect your future today. Text MK to 989898. Get your free info kit on gold and get a copy of the Ultimate Guide for Gold in the Trump Era with a foreword by Donald Trump Jr. There's no obligation, just information. Birch Gold has earned the trust of countless Americans looking to safeguard their savings. Just text my initials MK to the number 989898 today. The first round of peace talks to end the war in Ukraine concluded yesterday in Saudi Arabia. The meeting between the U.S., led by Secretary of State Marco Rubio, and the Russians, led by Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov, lasted approximately 4.5 hours. Mr. Rubio telling reporters he was pleased with the initial progress, outlining 4 points of agreement so far. 1, the U.S. and Russia will work to reestablish functionality of respective embassies in Moscow and Washington. 2, high-level teams will be appointed by each side to conduct negotiations, the end goal of which will be enduring and acceptable to all parties engaged. 3, both sides will work to examine areas of potential cooperation, both geopolitically and economically, after the war is ended. And 4, the bulk of the negotiations will be delegated to other people. But the attendees of today's meeting will remain engaged in the process. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky repeatedly expressed dissatisfaction with the Trump administration's approach to these negotiations, the Ukrainian leader not holding back at the Munich Security Conference.
The war is in Europe, and America is far from the invasion. And I think that we need to share more details because, to my mind, there are a lot of different voices around new American administration, and I'm not sure that all these voices on our side.
In multiple forums, Mr. Zelensky has stated there can be nothing about Ukraine without Ukraine. Mr. Zelensky was slated to visit Saudi Arabia yesterday as well, though not as part of the negotiations. That trip was rescheduled to a later date. Mr. Zelensky instead visited Turkey, where he suggested future peace talks should take place with Ukrainian participation. The Ukrainian leader does not believe that Russian President Vladimir Putin is serious about finding a lasting peace. President Trump addressed Zelensky's concerns last night from Mar-a-Lago.
I hear that, they're upset about not having a seat. Well, they've had a seat for 3 years and a long time before that. This could have been settled very easily. Just a half-baked negotiator could have settled this years ago without the loss of much land, very little land, without the loss of any lives, and without the loss of cities that are just laying on their side. When they're worried about not being seated, you mean somebody that should have gone in and made a deal a long time ago.
President Trump also calling out the Ukrainian president's declining poll numbers. In Saudi Arabia, Secretary Rubio came away from the meeting believing the Russians are serious about beginning negotiations.
I came away today convinced that they are willing to begin to engage in a serious process to determine how quickly and through what mechanism can an end be brought to this war. Whether we can ultimately reach that outcome will obviously depend on every side in this conflict's willingness to agree to certain things. When you talk about an enduring and sustainable end of the conflict, it means one that's acceptable to everyone involved in it. And that obviously includes Ukraine, but also our partners in Europe, and of course the Russian side as well.
National Security Advisor Mike Waltz, also a member of the delegation, maintained that communications between the U.S., European allies, and the Ukrainians are ongoing. President Trump said that he would be fine with European leaders stationing troops in Ukraine as part of a lasting peace deal.
If they want to do that, that's great. I'm all for it. If they want to do that, I think that'd be fine. If we have a peace deal, I think having troops over there from the standpoint of Europe, we won't have to put any over there because, we're very far away. But having troops over there would be fine. I would not object to it at all.
French President Emmanuel Macron and UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer have both stated they support deploying a European peacekeeping force. The date for the summit between President Trump and President Putin is not yet determined. The Hamas terror organization tells Israeli officials the bodies of Shiri Bibas and her 2 young sons, Ariel and Kafir, will be returned later this week. Ariel, aged 4, and Kafir, just 9 months old, when they were captured on October 7th, 2023. The youngest hostages taken in Hamas's savage attack that left about 1,200 dead. Shiri and her boys, with their red hair, last seen in a video taken by their captors. Just awful. She was seen wide-eyed and desperately clinging to her sons, surrounded by Hamas soldiers carrying rifles. Kafir, who would now be 2, never celebrated a birthday outside of Hamas custody. Israeli officials have yet to confirm the deaths. Yarden Bibas, the father of the boys, was also captured by Hamas on that day. He was held separately from his wife and children. Earlier this month, he was released alive. 6 living hostages remain in Hamas's custody, 2 of whom have been held in Gaza since 2014 and 2015. They will all be released on Saturday. 3 were originally expected to be freed. The reasoning for the accelerated timeline is unclear. Coming up, the fate of New York City Mayor Eric Adams is in Governor Kathy Hochul's hands, and the latest on the health of the Pope in just a moment. When it comes to grocery shopping and meal planning, it's often stressful and time-consuming. Between busy schedules and personal demands, finding the time to shop, plan meals, or cook healthy dishes from scratch is challenging. On top of that, maintaining special dietary needs and health goals can feel overwhelming. But now there's Hungry Root, the easiest way to eat healthy. Hungry Root acts as a personal shopper and nutritionist combined. It handles everything from weekly grocery shopping to meal planning, offering personalized recommendations based on individual tastes, preferences, and health goals. From smoothies and snacks to full meals, all offerings are healthy with no artificial sweeteners or preservatives. Only top quality ingredients are used, making healthy eating easy and delicious. Take advantage of this exclusive offer. For a limited time, get 40% off your first box, plus get a free item in every box for life. Go to hungryroot.com/MK and use the code MK. That's hungryroot.com/MK, code MK, to get 40% off your first box and a free item of your choice for life. hungryroot.com/MK, code MK. New York City Mayor Eric Adams fighting to retain his position after the DOJ drops corruption charges against him. Governor Kathy Hochul weighing whether or not to remove the embattled mayor from his post. A quick timeline of events. On February 10th, acting Deputy Attorney General Emile Beauvais ordered the DOJ to drop charges against Adams. The charges were brought under the Biden administration. Several federal prosecutors resigned over the dismissal, alleging it amounted to a quid pro quo. Mayor Adams is cooperating with the Trump administration's efforts to crack down on illegal immigration. Last Friday, the Democrat mayor sat down with Fox and Friends side by side with border czar Tom Homan to discuss their cooperation.
If he doesn't come through, I'll be back in New York City, and we won't be sitting on the couch. I'll be in his office, up his butt, saying, where the hell is the agreement we came to?
Mayor Adams' decision to cooperate with the Trump administration facing serious blowback from fellow Democrats. On Monday, 4 deputy mayors resigned from their positions. Governor Hochul spent yesterday in a series of meetings with top officials and influential community leaders. Mayor Adams taking a lot of crossfire from his fellow Democrats. Reverend Al Sharpton equated the mayor's cooperation with the Trump administration to political blackmail. Rival mayoral candidate, State Senator Zellner Myrie, saying Eric Adams no longer works for New Yorkers. He works for Donald Trump. The power to oust a mayor has never before been utilized in New York. Hochul released a statement that reads in part, overturning the will of the voters is a serious step that should not be taken lightly. That said, the alleged conduct at City Hall that has been reported over the past 2 weeks is troubling and cannot be ignored. The AP reports about 2/3 of New York City voters would approve of Governor Hochul removing Mayor Adams. President Trump's nominee to head the Labor Department, Lori Chavez-DeRemer, will take the hot seat today. Her confirmation hearing held by the Health, Education, Labor, and Pensions Committee is set to begin at 10 a.m. East. Ms. DeRemer may face the toughest questions yet from Republicans. A GOP Senate insider telling the New York Post Rand Paul is dead set against her. He is whipping against her right now. He's telling everyone who will listen how much he hates her. Ms. DeRemer is a longtime union ally. As a member of Congress, she backed the PRO Act. That act ultimately failed in the House, but it would have banned right-to-work laws in more than 24 states. President Trump worked hard to court the union vote. Sean O'Brien became the first president of the International Brotherhood of Teamsters to speak at the RNC last July. Politico reported in November that O'Brien was pushing behind the scenes for Ms. DeRemer to get the nomination. In the ultimate plot twist, Democrats tend to approve of the pick. Senators Tim Kaine, Tammy Baldwin, and Ed Markey have all spoken positively of the nominee. Senator Chris Murphy of Connecticut telling Punchbowl News Ms. DeRemer was among the best picks Democrats could hope for. Oh boy. Kash Patel cleared another hurdle in his nomination process to lead the FBI. Despite strong Democrat opposition, Mr. Patel appeared to have the votes to pass. If his timeline mirrors that of Tulsi Gabbard and RFKJ, his final vote will likely be held tomorrow. Pope Francis facing a lengthy hospital stay following a diagnosis of pneumonia. The 88-year-old pontiff admitted to Rome's Gemelli Hospital on Friday after a week of struggling with bronchitis. The Vatican releasing a statement describing the Pope's condition as, quote, complex. They say the infection has spread to lung air sacs, a potentially dangerous development in elderly people. This is just the latest in a string of medical episodes suffered by the head of the Catholic Church. About a week and a half ago, Pope Francis only got halfway through his homily before breathlessness forced him to hand it off to an aide. This was not the first time such a thing has happened. The Pope has a long history of lung problems. Part of his right lung was removed when he was just 21 years old. We will closely monitor the Pope's condition and deliver updates as they come. Well, that'll do it for episode 1 of your AM Update. Hope you enjoyed it. I did. I'm Megyn Kelly, and we'll be back here for the Megyn Kelly Show in just a bit, live on Sirius XM Triumph Channel 111 at noon East and on youtube.com/Megyn Kelly, as well as all podcast platforms.